Good morning, students. Welcome to this session for Paper 3, Goods and Services Tax. Today's topic is supply under GST. We already had two earlier sessions for this topic. And in these sessions, we had covered the earlier concepts. Today, we'll be starting with Schedule 3 of CGST Act. So in previous classes, we had covered that what do you mean by the term supply, how it has been defined under the law, and what are the parameters which have to be fulfilled for any activity or transaction to qualify as supply? Supply should be of goods or services or both. Supply should be carried out for a consideration, and supply should be in course or furtherance of business. Then we also checked that in case any of these elements is absent, any of these elements is not present, can we term that particular transaction or that particular activity as supply? For that, we had the import of services, which qualified as supply, even if it is not in course or furtherance of business. Then we discussed Schedule 1, where the activities which were not carried for consideration, they were also termed as supply. Then in one more case which we discussed is that the supplies of goods or services between a club or an unincorporated association and its members also qualified as supply. So, and after understanding the term supply, we came to the classification of supply as goods or services. For that, we had Schedule 2. So, Schedule 2 had certain activities listed which were classified either as goods or as services. So, till that point, we had discussed in the last class. In fact, we had done two clarifications also based on Schedule 2. Some part of those clarifications I will touch upon today also, because I had received some doubts regarding that. So maybe some students are not clear with those clarifications, some part of those clarifications. So that we'll discuss today also. Thereafter, we'll discuss Schedule 3 and then mixed and composite supplies. After that, we'll take the questions based on the topics which we had done till now, that is GST in India and introduction and supply under GST. So I hope all of you have revised the concepts which we have discussed till now, because we will be discussing questions based on those topics, even if you have not done the topic so far. So be with me, try to understand the concept and the questions. I hope you will understand the basic concept which is involved in solving those questions. So let's start with our presentation. Now, this was the circular which we discussed last time. This was the taxability of tenancy rights against tenancy premium under GST. Now, this circular is actually based on a tenancy setup which is there prevalent in some of the states. It is in common parlance, it is known as Pagdi system. So I will once again explain this concept and then we'll see what circular says about the taxability of the transactions. In Pagdi system, what happens? The owner of the building or owner of the land, he grants the tenancy rights. That means he rents out his property to the tenant. Generally, this system is prevalent in case of the residential buildings, residential dwellings. So the tenant rents out or rent his bill or his house to a tenant. And in lieu of that, what he gets is he gets a periodic rent. This is the general, general situation which prevails, that whenever somebody is renting out his property, he gets rent in return for that. In Pagdi system, he gets a lump sum amount at the beginning of the contract, which is called the tenancy premium. So he is getting two things. He is getting tenancy premium plus he is getting periodic rent also for renting out his building or for renting out his residential dwelling. So this lump sum amount, this tenancy premium is commonly or generally it is known as Pagdi. So he is paying a lump sum amount at the beginning for getting this rented accommodation, plus he is paying the periodic rent. Now this tenant, he also, so in lieu of that, he is granted all the tenancy rights in that property. Now he has the right, this tenant has a right to surrender this tenancy right in favor of some new tenant or in favor of some other person. And in return, but this he has to do with the approval of the landlord only. He has to ask the landlord, I want to give it to someone else. Can I transfer these rights to this particular person? So he will be surrendering his tenancy rights in favor of a new tenant, and the new tenant will pay a portion of tenancy premium, which we call pagdi, to this tenant, outgoing tenant, plus to the landlord. And in addition to that, he will pay periodic rent just the way the outgoing tenant was paying. He will also pay the periodic rent to the landlord. So in this case, the outgoing tenant has surrendered his tenancy rights in favor of the new tenant. In return, he is getting some portion of the tenancy premium. And the new tenant, he is getting tenancy rights. He is paying tenancy premium plus periodic rent. Tenancy premium, he will pay some portion to the outgoing tenant and some portion to the landlord. Plus periodic rent, he will be paying to the landlord. Because from now onwards, he will be the new tenant for the landlord. Now, what will be the tax GST liability in this situation? First of all, the grant of tenancy rights by landlord to the outgoing tenant, though it is a supply, but it is exempt under GST. This you will discuss, you will understand while discussing the chapter of exemptions under GST. There we have a whole list of exemptions which is available. So services provided by way of renting of a residential dwelling to an unregistered person. Now here the tenant, we are assuming that he is an unregistered person. So this particular transaction, because this setup we are talking about the renting of residential dwelling to generally individuals. So this is exempt under the exemption notification. So this particular transaction, that is the grant of tenancy rights by the owner or the landlord to the tenant, is exempt. Second transaction was that the outgoing tenant has surrendered his tenancy rights to the new tenant. Now this is taxable because there is no exemption. The exemption is only with regard to the renting of property or renting of residential dwelling by landlord to the tenant. But if tenant is surrendering his tenancy rights to a new tenant, then that will be taxable. This is what circular has clarified, that this transaction will be, this part of the transaction will be taxable. And the new tenant, he is also paying tenancy premium and periodic rent to the landlord. So this becomes similar to the original transaction, the first transaction. So this is also exempt. So here we have three transactions. Renting of residential dwelling by landlord to tenant is exempt. Surrender of tenancy rights by outgoing tenant to the new tenant will be taxable. And the rent and tenancy premium paid by new tenant to the landlord, that will be exempt. This exemption you will discuss in detail when you will be doing the chapter of exemptions from GST. So don't worry too much on that what this exemption is actually. We'll discuss in detail. Just for the time being, you need to know that any property, any residential dwelling which has been rented to an unregistered person, it is exempt from GST. So hope this particular clarification is now clear to you, because I had received some queries regarding this from the students. So transfer of tenancy rights by an outgoing tenant to a new tenant against consideration, which is in the form of tenancy premium or pagdi, it is taxable. Service which is being provided here is the service of surrendering the tenancy rights. And renting of residential dwelling for use as a residence to an unregistered person is exempt. Now, thereafter we discussed another clarification which was regarding the applicability of GST on liquidated damages, compensation, penalty, out of breach of contract and other provisions of law we discussed. Here we discussed para 5E of schedule 2. So in this, we discuss certain examples also. Hope this is clear to you. Here I received some queries regarding this particular transaction, that is the fixed charges for power charged by the power generating companies. So we will discuss this particular aspect of this clarification once again. Now, what is the setup or what is the contract between the power generating companies and state electricity boards and state electricity boards and its consumers? The power generating companies, and the state electricity boards, they have generally an agreement that this much amount of electricity will be scheduled, will be required by the state electricity boards on a monthly basis. And the consumers also have a basic, you can say the minimum amount, which is for which a particular charge will be there. And after that, a higher amount will be charged from them. Now, the amount which is being charged by the state electricity boards from the customers or by the power generating companies from the state electricity boards, it has two elements. First is the minimum fixed charges and variable per unit charge. Now, minimum fixed charges, as the name suggests, it is a fixed charge. It is not going to change with the requirement of electricity or consumption of electricity. Whatever electricity is being scheduled, or whatever electricity is being consumed, that is irrespective. These charges are irrespective of that. These charges are basically for generating the electricity, for making the electricity available to the customers. So these charges will definitely be there even if no electricity has been consumed or electricity below the threshold limit has been consumed. Generally, these charges are related to the capacity of the meter. For example, in your house, you must be having electricity meters. So they have a certain load capacity, that they are 5 kilowatt meters or they are 2 kilowatt meters based on your consumption, general consumption, which you have on a monthly basis. So that particular capacity, on the basis of that capacity, these minimum charges are fixed and they are charged even if no electricity has been consumed by the consumer during a particular month. So the question which arose, or the doubt which arose, was that these two elements. Now, we know that electricity is not is exempt from GST. So there is no GST on electricity. And both these charges, if we assume that minimum fixed charges and variable per unit charge, they are for electricity, then they will also not be subject to GST. But the doubt which arose was that whether these minimum fixed charges, they are a service of tolerating the act of not consuming the minimum capacity or the minimum threshold limit. If we are not consuming any electricity, whether these charges are for tolerating that act of not consuming the minimum amount of minimum units of electricity. So the circular clarified that no, it is not a service of tolerating the act of not consuming the minimum amount or minimum unit of electricity. It is only a charge for electricity, for providing electricity, because as we said, these charges are for making electricity available to the clients. You have to set up the meter, you have to put up the lines for electricity, for supplying the electricity. So these charges are for that purpose. And variable per unit depends on your consumption of the electricity. So these charges are only for the purpose of providing electricity to the customers, and therefore both these charges, so they are not taxable as a separate supply. And both these charges, minimum fixed charges plus variable per unit charge, they are the component of price for sale of electricity. Therefore, they are also exempt. Because electricity is exempt, and consequently, these two charges are exempt. So this minimum fixed charge is not a service of tolerating the act of consuming the minimum contracted amount or minimum threshold. So I hope these two clarifications, these 2 points are now clear to you. Let me see some queries if somebody has. Smita is saying voice is not clear. So if please let me know, other students also, if any problem is there with the voice at your end also. Ritu is asking, for goods used in business taken for private use, there is no consideration. Why are still stating it as supply? If it is taken in course or furtherance of business, then the consideration we do not have to see, because we have to see whether it falls in Schedule 1 or not. Any activity which falls in Schedule 1, it is deemed as a supply. Pagdi system, Sushil is asking. Sushil, I think I have already explained you Pagdi system, where a landlord, when he rents out his residential dwelling to a tenant, then he charges a lump sum amount in the beginning. So he charges a periodic rent, and he says that this much amount, suppose 1 lakh rupees, he's saying at the beginning of this renting agreement, you have to pay me 1 lakh rupees in the beginning. That amount is called the Pagdi. So this is the Pagdi system. Now in Pagdi system, if that landlord has to get his house vacated from the tenant, sometimes he has to pay this Pagdi amount to him for getting the house vacated also. This amount can vary at that time. So it doesn't mean that if he has given 1 lakh rupees at the beginning of the contract, this person has given. So for getting the house vacated, landlord has to pay the same amount. No, at that time he has to bargain that what amount the tenant will charge, because usually in these states where this system prevails, the houses are being owned, these rented to the persons for a long time. So they take some charges, they take this tenancy premium. We call it tenancy premium for vacating the house also. Is the portion go to landlord of tenancy premium taxable? Harish is asking. No, Harish. Whatever portion of tenancy premium which is going to landlord, that is not taxable. But the tenancy premium going by the new tenant to the outgoing tenant, that will be taxable. Minimum rental of electricity. Prashant, I hope you understood this circular now. Okay, Hardik is telling audio video is clear. So Rama is also telling that everything is perfect from at their end. So maybe some system issue at the student's end. Gerald is asking which page number for ICAI material. So you're asking for this circular, Gerald. This circular is available on page number. Page number 2.51. This tenancy premium circular is there, and after that we had the circular for liquidated damages. So I hope this is clear to you. Now we come to the next concept, that is Schedule 3. In fact, Schedule 3 is part of the discussion. What we are going to discuss today is non-supplies under GST, the activities or transactions which are not considered as supply under GST. These supplies have been provided, or they have been listed by way of three modes. First is they are listed in Schedule 3. Second, non-supplies, they have been notified by way of notification. Some non-supplies, we are calling them non-supplies for the sake of convenience. This is not a legal term which has been provided by the law. But what it actually means is that they are not considered as supply. They are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So any transaction which we have to check that whether it is a supply or not. So we have to start from the very beginning. We have to see whether it is a good or a service or both. Then we have to see that whether it is for consideration. If it is not for consideration, whether it falls within the exception. If it is in course or furtherance of business. If not, then whether it falls within the exception. Then after that, we have to see that whether it does not fall within these three schedules, or these three, Schedule 3 or notification or circular. By way of any these three means, it has been classified or it has been categorized as a non-supply or as a supply, which as an activity or transaction which is neither a supply of good or nor supply of services. So there is a circular also which prescribes certain activities to be non-supply. By way of notification also, government has notified certain activities as a non-supply. And in Schedule 3, we have a complete list of activities or transactions which are termed as neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So we'll discuss each one of them one by one. First of all, Schedule 3. In Schedule 3, we have this. This is the list of activities. If you say on 6th row, in 6th row, we have a change, amendment which has been marked. Now, this amendment has been made by CGST Amendment Act 2023. And please note that this amendment will not be there in your study materials. This would be there in the statutory update because it came after the publication of the study material. Study material was published in the month of July. And this amendment was effective. It is actually effective from October 1st and it came in the month of August. So this amendment, it is properly covered in statutory update and we'll be covering it in class. So I told you earlier also that all the amendments which are applicable for your examination, we'll be covering those amendments in these classes. So this is a complete list of the activities which will not be considered as supply under GST. Another important point which you need to know as an intermediate student is these last three activities: supply of goods from non-taxable territory to non-taxable territory without entering into India, supply of warehouse goods before clearance for home consumption, supply of goods by consignee by endorsement of documents of title to goods after dispatch of goods from port outside India, but before clearance for home consumption. These three entries, when I'm reading out, you must be finding them difficult. So don't worry, these are outside the purview of the intermediate syllabus. You do not have to refer to these three entries because they some way or the other relate to the import or export. So they are not part of your syllabus. At intermediate level, we have to cover only the first 6 entries which are listed here. We'll be discussing all of them one by one. So first one is para 1 of schedule 3. Now here also each entry is termed as a para. Now, services by an employee to an employer in course or in relation to his employment. This point we had discussed when we were discussing Schedule 1, Para 2, where we had said the supply of goods or services between the related persons is termed or it qualifies as supply even if consideration is not there. Now, employer and employee are related as per the definition of related persons. Therefore, any services which are provided by employer to employee by virtue of Schedule 1, they appear to be qualify as supply. But since Schedule 3 expressly excludes these services which have been provided by employee to employer, remember the words are employee to employer. So if any services are provided by employer to employee, and that too not because of his contractual agreement, then that will qualify as supply. So that there in Schedule 1, we had discussed about the gift given by the employer to employee. So employer is giving gift to employee, and that is not mentioned in their contractual agreement that he will be giving them gift every year. So that gift is that it qualifies as supply, even if it is not. Obviously gift is a voluntary. It is voluntary in nature, and no amount is charged for giving gift to anyone. So there it qualifies as supply. But here, any service which is provided by employee to employer in course or in relation to employment. So these words in course of or in relation to employment are the most important words. Any service which is provided by employee to employer in course of employment will not be a supply. If any service he is providing outside the contract of employment, then that would be termed as supply. Now let us see an example. If any director is there and that director is receiving any remuneration which is declared as salaries in the books of accounts of the company. So company is deducting TDS under Income Tax Act on those salary and that salary amount. So that amount will not be considered as a supply, or the services provided by director to the company will not be treated as a supply because it is in course of employment. So the important point is that it should be in the course of employment. Then, so anything given by way of contractual agreement of employment will not be termed as supply. Let us see another example. This we discussed at the time of Schedule 1 also. Once again, we are discussing it. Perquisites provided by employer to its employees in terms of the contractual agreement entered into by the employer and employee. They are in lieu of services provided by employee to employer in relation to his employment. So these perquisites will also not be considered as supply because the employer, now for example, the employer is providing the commutation service to its employees. But why is it providing these commutation services? Because it is mentioned in his appointment contract. It is part of his cost to company, CTC, which we generally call, that the company has taken into account all these costs as part of his remuneration, as part of his the cost of that employee to the company, as part of his employment contract. It is mentioned that the company will be providing commutation or the to and fro, the travel of the employee. Then they will be providing canteen services, the food to the employee at the place of employment. And they would be providing some membership of club, gym for the employee. So these are the perquisites which the employer is providing to the employee. But these services are provided by the employer because that employee is providing services to the employee under the contract of employment. So employee is providing services to employer. In return, employer is giving these employees certain perquisites in the form of travel, in the form of membership of some fees. They are providing them some free vacations. Then canteen facilities are provided. So all these perquisites, because they are in course of or in relation to his employment, they shall not be considered as supply and they shall not be subject to GST under GST law. So because the intention of law has never been to tax this transaction, It was exempt under, it was not exempt, it was under the negative list in the time of the service tax also. So the intention of law has never been to tax the services provided by employee to an employer. An employee should not be burdened with the GST liability. Now, another example is that when we say that this particular arrangement is not an employer-employee relationship, or it is not in course of employment, though it can be, that person can be termed as employee, but this service or this supply is not in course or furtherance of the employment. Any service provided by a person to another on a contract basis, that is on principal to principal basis. Suppose a consultant is there for the company, it is providing advices to the company on legal matters, on tax matters, but it is providing it on principal to principal basis, on contract basis, and that will not be considered as an employer-employee relationship. And that those services provided by that person to the company will not be considered as will be considered as supply, provided other conditions are fulfilled, but this will not be included in this para 1 of Schedule 3. Any amount paid by employer to employee for not joining a competing business is paid for providing the service of forbearance to act. It is a non-compete fees actually. We discussed it in para 5E of Schedule 2, which we had regarding that we did a clarification also just now. There we discussed that if an employer is saying that please don't join the business of my competitor, and I will pay you 10,000 per month for that. So he is paying the salary of 50,000 to that employee, and 10,000 separately he is paying for not joining the business of his competitor. This amount which the employer is paying to employee will not be included in para 1 of Schedule 3. That can be termed as supply provided other conditions are fulfilled. Because in order to ascertain whether an activity or transaction is supply, we have to see so many things. So all the conditions we have done till now. So we have to, but this will not be covered in para 1 of Schedule 3. Okay, so it is not in course of employment. Now, before moving further, let me see if some queries are there. Power or electricity, supply of power, supply of electricity is not a supply, Srinivasan. GST is not levied on electricity. I think because it is in the nature of basic, one of the basic amenities, so that is why the GST has not been levied. That could be the intention. Abdul is asking, can you refer study material where it is written? I told Abdul that it is there. Specifically regarding electricity, if you are asking, it is mentioned on page number 2.60. In course or furtherance of business, Sushil is asking, I already told Sushil, when we say in course or furtherance of business, in last class also I explained it, that something which is done for the purpose of business, which is not for your personal purpose, is in course of business. In furtherance of business means that you are doing it for promoting your business, for advancement of business, or anything in relation to the business. If you are doing that, is in for the furtherance of the business. So it should not be for the personal purpose of the business of the owner. So it is saying study material para 1 is different. No, Abdullah. In study material also para 1 is same, that is by services by employer to employee. Neha is asking, anything provided by employer to employee or employee to employer in course of employment is not a supply. Yes, that should be in course of employment. But any service provided by employer to employee. Now, if it is not in course of, if employer is providing any service to the employer, okay, suppose he is providing anything which is not, but it should not be in course of employment, it should not arise from the contract of employment, then that will, if it is providing outside the contract of employment, then that can be termed as supply. But if it is by way of contract of employment, it is in course of employment, then that will, generally the remuneration or consideration will be paid by employer, or perquisites will be provided by employer to the employee for his services. So that will not be considered as supply. Krunal is asking, Pagdi mein premium क्यों देना पड़ता है? Because they want to actually just, I think it's kind of a security amount which they are getting, but this is not returnable. They have to pay tax on. That amount of security or pagdi is not returnable to the tenant. Kunal is asking pagdi concept not clear. So I told you that earlier also, Kunal. What specific doubt you have, please ask me, because I have explained pagdi system twice. I will explain it at the end of the session if time permits. Annapurna example which you have given is not there, ma'am. It's so confusing. Okay, Abdul, अन्नपूर्णा वाला एग्जाम्पल अगर आपको नहीं भी समझ आ रहा तो कोई बात नहीं है. आप चार्ज ऑफ जीएसटी चैप्टर में जब डायरेक्टर्स का कॉन्सेप्ट पूरी तरह पढ़ लोगे तब आपको शायद ही ज्यादा समझ में आएगा. डायरेक्टर्स दो तरह के होते हैं. कुछ डायरेक्टर्स इंप्लॉइज होते हैं कंपनी के, कुछ डायरेक्टर्स इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स होते हैं जो कभी भी इंप्लॉय नहीं बन सकते हैं. तो जो डायरेक्टर्स इंप्लॉय नहीं बन सकते हैं उनके लिए तो ये क्लॉज लगेगा ही नहीं, तो वो तो कभी भी पैरा 1 में नहीं आएंगे. लेकिन जो डायरेक्टर्स इंप्लॉइज हैं कंपनी के, उनका नाम डायरेक्टर है बट वो कंपनी के लिए एम्प्लॉय की तरह एक्ट कर रहे हैं, उनको कंपनी सैलरी देती है, उनकी सैलरी पे टीडीएस डिडक्ट करती है, तो ये बहुत सिंपली इसी पैरा 1 में कवर हो जाता है. बिकॉज दे बिकम एन एम्प्लॉय एंड दे आर बीइंग पेड सैलरी, उस सैलरी पे टीडीएस भी डिडक्ट हो रहा है. दिस ऑल प्रूव्स दैट दोज डायरेक्टर्स आर एक्चुअली द एम्प्लॉयज ऑफ द कंपनी. But this example I had taken just to explain you that even if a person is a director, he can be an employee because he is given salary for that particular service which he is providing to the company. सैलरी मिल रही है उसको, उसकी सैलरी पे टीडीएस डिडक्ट हो रहा है, ये शो करता है कि वो एक एम्प्लॉय है. क्योंकि वो एम्प्लॉय है तो वो पैरा 1 में उसकी सर्विसेज कवर होंगी एंड दैट विल नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड एज सप्लाई. If employee gets commission, so can we consider supply? The nomenclature can be any, but if it is mentioned in his term of employment, if it is there in his contract that yes, he is providing some services to employer and for that he'll get this amount, name could be any, then he will be considered as employee and those services will be covered under para 1. Let us move to next para. Para 2 says, services by any court or tribunal established by any law for the timing in force. That will not be considered as a supply. So because our intention is not to tax our courts or tribunals for providing services to the public at large. And this court includes the district courts, high courts, as well as Supreme Courts. This is a simple clause, I think, it is self-explanatory that any services provided by courts, tribunals will not be under the purview of, will not be considered as supply. In Schedule 3, Para 3A says, now our members of our parliament, state legislatures, then panchayats, municipalities, so if they are providing any services, the functions which are performed by them as a member of parliament or as a member of state legislature, so our MPs, MLAs, they are performing functions in these roles, then that will also not be considered as supply. So any function performed by member of parliament as this role, in his role as a member of parliament, by a member of state legislature, members of panchayats, gram panchayats, the members of those panchayats also, municipalities, any other local bodies are there, so that shall also not be considered as supply. Para 3B, now clause B of para 3 says, duties performed by any person who holds any post in pursuance of the provisions of constitution in that capacity. So that that post he is holding by virtue of the provisions of the constitution, and whatever duties he is performing as that being in that capacity is also not a supply. Now, certain examples are there with us. Now, who are these persons who hold any post in pursuance of provisions of the constitution? They are the President of India, Vice President of India, then Prime Minister of India, all governors of all the states, Chief Justice of India, then Speaker of Lok Sabha, Chief Election Commissioner, CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, then Attorney General of India, and Chairman of UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. There can be other examples also. I have taken few examples to give you an idea that these are the persons, if any duties are performed by them. Obviously, the intention of law is not to tax them for these services or duties which they are performing. Similarly, duties performed by any person as a chairperson or a member or a director of any body which is established either by the central government or by the state government or by the local authorities. So these are, for now, example of these bodies which are established by central government can be the RBI, then ISRO, CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, Income Tax Department, then your CBDT, CBIC. State governments establish the state electricity boards, then the transportations, state development authorities, public work departments. So the directors, the chairperson of these bodies, any duties if they are performing as a chairperson, as a member, as a director, then that those duties will be outside the purview of supply. They will not be considered as supply. Then the next entry is, or next para is, services of funeral, burial, crematorium, mortuary, including transportation of the deceased. So obviously, nobody would want GST or tax on such services which are being provided. Para 5 says sale of land and subject to paragraph 5B of Schedule 2. Paragraph 5B of Schedule 2, if you remember, that was regarding construction of any building. Construction involved renovation, alteration, modification, repair, everything was included in that construction. And that was regarding construction of building. Here we say sale of land is not a supply. If you are selling the land, that will not be considered as supply under GST, because land is an immovable property. Land is not a good. So GST, it cannot be considered as supply. Sale of land cannot be considered as supply. That I think very clear to you. Sale of building. Now, regarding the sale of building, we have two different aspects. So we will discuss that if the building we are constructing the building, the service of construction of the building, Schedule 2 provides that this shall be considered as supply of service. Now, when Schedule 2 is classifying it as supply of service, that means it is first of all a supply, then only Schedule 2 is providing a classification that this will be considered as supply of service. Is it so? And if Schedule 2 says that construction of building will be classified under this para 5B when some consideration with regard to that building has been received before the completion of the building. At the time of construction stage itself, some consideration has passed on from the buyer to the seller. An entire consideration has not been received after the completion, then we term that particular service, that particular transaction as supply of service. However, in case entire consideration is received after the completion of the building, then this will fall under Schedule 3. For example, you have a ready-to-move flat. Everything has, and that flat has received the certificate of completion. That apartment has received the certificate of completion in a society. You are buying that particular apartment. Then that will be the sale of building, or that will be, that transaction will be under the sale of building. And that will be covered under Schedule 3. So it will not be considered as a supply, neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. I hope para 5 is clear to you all. After that, we come to the actionable claims. Now, before we discuss this, because there is an amendment in this para, let me see some queries first. Mr. V is saying, ma'am, in what type of situation that Pagdi system exists? New tenant can directly contact owner, right? Because the ownership tenancy rights have been transferred by the landlord to the tenant. So I told you that if he has to get them back, he has to pay that tenancy premium to the tenant. And this tenancy premium can be higher than what the tenant has actually paid, initially paid. So now the tenancy rights are with the tenant. Tenant can surrender them to some other person. But he will do it with the landlord's approval, that is for sure. But this tenancy rights, now they rest with tenant. So if tenant has to get them back, he has to first pay the outgoing tenant's amount and then he has to give it to the new tenant. So this arrangement can also be there, but we are talking about an arrangement, and the landlord cannot get back his residential property generally without paying the tenancy premium. So in this arrangement, that is why it is possible that the outgoing tenant, with the approval of landlord, has given it to someone else, some new tenant, and that person is paying tenancy premium to the landlord as well as periodic rent. Some portion of tenancy premium this outgoing tenant, old tenant will get. Now, Bhavika is asking, these are covered under income tax. Why it is exempt under GST? Because they are covered under income tax. GST, we have a specified definition of supply. So it doesn't fall within the purview. The intention is not to tax a person as a GST is a business tax. So it is basically levied on a business transaction generally. Now, when a person is getting salary, so he is not doing any business, and that is why and there are other services. Now, services of a tribunal, court. So the intention is not to tax them, though these services provided by government are otherwise taxable. It is not so that all services provided by government is not under GST purview. It is not so. Services provided by government are equally liable to GST as a service provided by a non-governmental person. But certain services which we feel that they are the constitutional duties of a person, they are required for the public interest, they are required for they are the essential commodities, they are the essential services. So some of them have been excluded from the purview of supply itself. That supply, they are not considered as supply, and GST will not be levied on. Services, they have made them leviable to GST, but they have exempted it by way of exemption notification, which you will be covering afterwards in chapter exemption from GST. There also you will see that basic amenities, these essential services have been exempted from GST. But why they have been done by way of notification? Because somewhere down the line, government has this in mind that if in future they feel that they want to tax it, they can remove that, they can omit that exemption, and they can bring that within the purview of GST. So that is possible. But something which is outside the purview of supply, then GST cannot be levied on that. So basically, the nature of services is such that they are essential services. They are for public or an employee. If he is receiving salary, then it is not in the nature of business. It is not his business income. So he has already been taxed under income tax and GST. He is not providing any service which is taxable under GST. Meaning of commencement of this clause. Okay, this is only for this purpose that anybody who has, let me see the point once again, who is not deemed as an employee before the commencement of this clause. So if before the commencement of the clause, this person has been deemed as employee, then these duties will not be outside the purview of Schedule 3. Otherwise, so it could be by way of the setup of that particular body, it has been mentioned in their setup or their statute that these designations will be termed as employee. Then in that case, this will not be attracted. ICAI is also established by an act of parliament. Now, these are the bodies established by the state or central governments. Services of legislative authorities or governmental authorities, they have been separately exempted, Jeron. But here we are talking about the services provided by their elected representatives, that is MLAs, MPs. Their functions which they are actually discharging, they have been brought outside the purview of GST. Governmental services, I told you that they are within the purview of GST. Only thing is that some of those services have been exempted by way of exemption notification. If the government feels that they are essential services, so then in that case they have been exempted. Abdul is asking, we don't need to refer statutory updates, we can read from study material. Abdul, you need to refer statutory update also, because in these classes I would be covering the amendment, but to refer to those amendments or amended portion, you have to go to the statutory update. But yes, class here will be complete in itself. When you are going through the class, then please keep the statutory update with you also, so that you can especially mark the amended provision in the study material itself while going through the class. Tahira is asking Schedule 2(5)(b), please explain. Okay, Tahira, I had already explained it, but just to have once again revised the same. Para 5B says that the construction of any immovable property, construction includes the repair, renovation, then any modification, any alteration in the property, that is a supply of service. Schedule 2, you know that it only classifies a particular supply as supply of service or supply of goods, but it does not tell it that it is a supply per se. So anything which is there in Schedule 2 is it means that it is actually a supply first, and then it has been classified as supply of good or supply of service. Schedule this para 5B says that the construction, we will term anything as construction of a building, provided the consideration for that building, for that construction service has been received prior to the completion of that building. We are talking about the construction here. So the consideration, part of consideration has been received in the beginning. So whenever you know that these residential societies, when they are residential societies, when they are constructed, so before construction, just a minute. Yeah. So these residential societies, they generally allow the consumers to book the flats or apartments before the building is completed. Just at the time of foundation itself, many societies, many residential groups, they allow the consumers to book the apartments at that time by paying some token money, by paying some percentage of the entire value, and they keep on getting that amount in different installments. So if that a type of arrangement is there, then that is a construction service, which is included in para 5B of Schedule 2, and it is a supply. But in case we are buying a ready to move apartment, that means construction is completed, that particular building has got the completion certificate. After that, we are going there and we are paying the entire consideration. We have not paid anything before the completion certificate was received. Then that is sale of building. That will be considered as an immovable property. And we know that under GST, we do not tax any sale or purchase of immovable property. We only tax the supply of goods. So immovable property is not goods. Therefore, this will be covered in para 5B in para 5 of Schedule 3. And land is obviously an immovable property. There is no controversy. There are no two aspects for the sale of land. Sale of land is always covered under Schedule 3, and it is not a supply. Sale of building, we have to see whether consideration is received before completion certificate or after completion certificate. If some consideration has been received before completion certificate, though some part of it will be received after completion also, then this is a construction service. It is a supply. If entire consideration is received after completion certificate, that will be treated as sale of building, and that will be covered under Schedule 3. It will not be considered as a supply. Sale of land, not supply of sale of building, supply. Gunjan is asking. So Gunjan, I have now explained that sale of building, in what cases it will be considered as supply. When some consideration has been received prior to receiving the completion certificate. Some consideration has been paid to the builder by the consumer before the building receives the completion certificate. Para 5, sale of building, completion certificate or after its occupation means whichever is earlier. Either completion certificate you receive or after its occupation. Obviously, you will occupy that building. Builder will allow you to occupy that building only when that building is complete and it has received the certificate of completion. Sale of building, whether seller is in course or furtherance of course of sale or purchase of building is supply or not. Sale of building I have now discussed adequately. Services provided along with sale of building also not considered as supply. No, any services which are in relation to sale of building, they can be considered as supply provided they satisfy other conditions. Till para 6, we can read from study material. Further paras, we need to refer from statutory update. Abdul, I think you're getting confused. I told you that till para 6, it is covered at the intermediate level. Para 7 and 8, which I read out in the beginning, they are not applicable for intermediate students. So you do not need to refer them. This para 6 actually had an amendment, which I have covered here. In study material, if you see this para, it will be mentioning actionable claims other than betting, gambling, and lottery. Only three items would be there. But here, since CGST Amendment Act has amended para 6, therefore, I had taken the amended position. This amended position will be reflected in your statutory update. In study material, here it would have been betting, gambling, and lottery because it was prior to amendment and study material was issued prior to this amendment being introduced. So I am discussing the amended position because that would be applicable for May 2024 examination. Okay. Nagarjun is asking, first class also I asked about this. Actionable claim is not a sale as per Sales of Goods Act. Then why it is included in definition? Because the government or the intention was to tax the horse racing, lottery, betting, gambling. These are actionable claims. Now they are considered because it is not so that if one act is saying something, if they had to take the same definition, then they would have not defined it at all under the GST law. They want to include it under the purview of the GST or include it under the purview of supply. That is why these actionable claims have been introduced. Let me cover the Schedule 3 Para 6, then you will be more clear with this, Nagarju. Gaurav is asking, what are actionable claims? Okay, I discussed it in first class, but let me once again explain it when I discuss Para 6, but let me see for other queries. Sale of building, GST liables. Mamta, now I hope you are clear that when on supply of building, GST would be liable. Only when consideration has been received after the completion certificate. If there is sale of land and on that building is also there, then what will happen to that building? Is it a supply? No, it will not be considered as supply because that means you have sold the land or building, whatever it is there, after completion. So you are not carrying out any construction activity on that. That will not be considered as supply. It will be included in para 5B or para 5 of Schedule 3. Now let us come to para 6, actionable claims. Many students have queries. What is an actionable claim? Actionable claim is actually a promise to pay someone an amount on a particular date or on fulfillment of particular condition. That is an actionable claim. Now, actionable claim, or you can say it is a claim of money by one person to another, or money which one person owes to other person. It becomes an actionable claim when it is enforceable in the court of law. When it can be when one person can sue other person for not paying that amount in court of law. So let us first of all go through those examples which are not actually taxable under GST, but they are actionable claims. For example, an insurance claim. Now you have taken an insurance policy, and in case of any injury, for example, you have taken insurance for your car gets damaged, then you will claim insurance amount from the insurance company. Now, this money insurance company owes to the insured person. In case the insurance company does not pay that amount, that person can sue insurance company in court of law. This is an actionable claim. But this actionable claim is not within the purview of GST. Under GST law, we'll see that. Arrears of rent. I have given some property on rent, and that arrears of rent are so the landlord can take these arrears, or it can recover these arrears of rent from the tenant in court of law if that person is not ready to pay that. Claims for future rents, if it is possible, the agreement is framed in such a manner, then claims for future rents can also be considered as actionable claims because the person can claim that, or it can enforce that person to provide to pay that money. Unsecured loans, any debts are there. In fact, actionable claims are actually debts. One person owes some money to other, he can get that money, he can recover that money, and if that person is not ready to pay that amount, he can go to court of law. Bills of exchange, promissory notes, they are also a promise to pay money to some other person, and if that person doesn't pay, then he can be sued in court. Now, some students now must be having some doubt in mind. The insurance claim, arrears of rent, we just said that we just discussed it is a supply. So I'm not saying that this is not under the purview of GST. I'm saying that this claim, that I can claim the arrears of rent, I can claim the arrears from a person, they are actionable claims. So those actionable claims are not under the purview of GST, but what is actually under the purview of GST is these. Any actionable claim, though it is a good, but it is not a supply because para 6 specifically excludes that actionable claim. Then, so then in how these become taxable, these 6 activities. So they become taxable by virtue of this exclusion in para 6, which says specified actionable claims. Other than specified actionable claims, none of the actionable claims will be under the purview of GST. They will not be considered as supply. So what are these specified actionable claims? We have a specified definition for actionable claims, which includes or which means horse racing, lottery, online money gaming, then betting, casinos, and gambling. So they are considered as supply. Okay. I hope this is now clear to you. Krunal is asking amendment. Where can we see the amendments? So these amendments are in the first class. I told you that they are available on BOS Knowledge Portal. There is a specific section amendments. There you can go to the paper 3 taxation and you will find amendments for both income tax as well as for GST at that point. So now we come to an end of para 6 of schedule 3 and succeeding paras are not at the intermediate level. So schedule 3 discussion is over. I told you that the non-supplies are listed not only in schedule 3, they are also notified by the government by way of notification. A circular is also there which clarifies that this transaction is neither a supply of good nor supply of services. So schedule 3 is over now. Now we come to the services notified by way of the notification. First such activity or transaction which is not a supply, which has been notified by a notification, is the activity in relation to the functions performed by a panchayat or a municipality. And these functions have been entrusted to that panchayat or municipality by the constitution. So you know that panchayat and municipality, they work for the public. They perform many public functions or functions in the public interest. So those functions, if they are listed in the constitution, in the articles of the constitution, then they will not be considered as supply. They have been excluded from the purview of supply. They will neither be considered as supply of service nor supply of goods. Similarly, another activity which is notified here is grant of alcoholic liquor license. Now, any alcohol, because you know that for selling alcoholic liquor, you need to have a license. Alcoholic liquor per se is outside the purview of GST. We had already discussed in first class that there is no GST on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Now, but license which is being granted for selling the alcoholic liquor is a separate thing. It is not selling alcoholic liquor. You are getting a license from the government. These are two different transactions. One is you have purchased alcoholic liquor and you are selling it in your outlet. This is not under purview of GST. But what about the first leg of the transaction? That is, I have got a license from the government and I am selling that. I have got a license from the government for selling the alcoholic liquor. And in return, I am paying some fee to the government for getting this license. Is this transaction also not within the purview of GST? So if we see by constitutionally, it is within the purview of GST, but the law has expressly excluded it from the definition of supply by way of a notification that any alcoholic liquor license granted by the state governments to the alcoholic liquor sellers will not be considered as a supply. It will neither be a supply of goods nor supply of services. Then, but it is important to note here that this license is shown only for alcoholic liquor, or this exclusion is only for license of alcoholic liquor. If government is providing other services to the business entities, for example, the grant of license for export, somebody has to export certain restricted items and it is getting license for that. So that will not be covered here. Some mining rights are being given by the government, natural resources such as spectrum, etc. Any payment made by the business entities to the governments for getting these licenses or these rights, that will not be covered under this notification, and therefore they will be covered under the purview of supply. Then we have to see other conditions whether they are being fulfilled or not, because we know that there are a list of conditions which have to be fulfilled. We have a question on that in our study material which I am taking here, because this itself explains or answers this question. Now you will be able to answer this question. This question is there in Test Your Knowledge. So I will try to cover all the questions of Test Your Knowledge today, and some MCQs also I will take, which will help you in understanding that whether you have understood the concepts of these two chapters or not. Sarvana and Sons wishes to start supplying alcoholic liquor for human consumption in the state of Tamil Nadu. Therefore, it applies for license to Tamil Nadu government for selling liquor, for which the state government has charged specified fee from it. Examine whether the grant of alcoholic liquor license by the Tamil Nadu government to Sarvana and Sons qualifies as supply. So I hope this I need not ask the answer also. So you know that this is not within the purview of supply. Now let me see some queries. Neha is saying actionable claim is not a supply, but specified actionable claim is a supply. Neha, you have understood the concept correctly. This is what I wanted to say, that specified actionable claims, they are supply. Abdul, for amendment of para 6, you need to refer statutory update when you are reading yourself, when you are studying yourself. But here I have covered that amendment. For para 6, I had given the examples are given to you, Bhavika, that the lottery, gambling, betting, casino, horse racing, online gaming, they are within the purview of the GST. Breach of contract is included in supply. Vaishali is asking. No, Vaishali, breach of contract is not included. In fact, that is what we did in liquidated damages, that we are breach of contract itself cannot be a supply. A contract is you have entered into a contract for providing certain supplies. So if you have not provided that supply, that particular service it is not a supply. If you had compensated that person for that breach which you have conducted, then that compensation will also not be a supply, because the circular 178 has clearly clarified it that yes, liquidated damages cannot be considered as a compensation, cannot be considered as a consideration for breach of contract. Breach of contract is never intended for any contract. You are entering a contract not for getting it breached. So whatever compensation the aggrieved person is getting, that will not be considered as a consideration for a supply. Okay, Ritu is asking correctly, mentioning correctly. Rituraj, Aparna, Raj, Jairon Raj, and Sushil, Khushbu, and Jaspreet. All of you are right that this is not a supply, because here Sarvana and Sons is getting a license for alcoholic liquor, for selling alcoholic liquor from Tamil Nadu government in lieu of the fee which it has paid for getting that license. So it is not a supply. Now we come to the non-supplies which are notified by way of circulars. So non-supplies have been also, in fact, they are not notified by way of circulars. They are clarified by way of circulars. So read these words notified as clarified. A circular is there which clarifies that a particular transaction does not qualify as supply. It is not a supply. Now, what is this transaction? Interstate movement of various modes of conveyance, including rigs, tools, and spares, and all goods on wheels like cranes, between distinct persons. Now, this is important here, that this interstate movement should be between distinct persons. I will take an example and explain this to you. Carrying goods or passengers, or this rigs, tools, spares, or any other goods for repairs and maintenance, and such movement should not be for further supply of conveyance. Now, let us take the question which is given in the study. That will help you, that will act as an example also. Gagan Engineering Private Limited, registered in Haryana, is engaged in providing maintenance and repair services for heavy steel machinery. Now, in this question, what is there is Gagan Engineering Limited is engaged in providing maintenance and maintenance and repair services. It repairs heavy machines. It has workshops throughout India, and customers are also located at those places. But it's it's set up where it has all the equipments. It is generally located at one place in Haryana. So from Haryana workshop, it has to take these repair equipments, consumables, tools, parts, spare parts, which has to be put in those machineries. Everything it has to take in container trucks to those workshops which are located in its workshops located in other places. Okay. Its repairing centers are located throughout India. Clients are also located in those states. From its workshop in Haryana, it has to take all these spare parts, tools, then the repair equipments, some consumables, oil, uh, and rigs. All these things have to be taken. Now, you need some conveyance for taking them to the repair centers. So suppose a container truck is there, and this container truck is owned by Gagan Engineering Private Limited. It takes its trucks to these repair centers. In those trucks, all the repair material is there. And after reaching that repair center, that material is used for repairing the machinery. Now the question arose whether these trucks which are moving from one place to another, whether the movement of these trucks, now this can it be considered as supply? Important point is that these trucks are moving between the location of distinct persons. An interstate movement is there, then the conveyance is carrying these trucks or this can be truck, they can buses, because some passengers or some goods. Here we have taken the example of repair material. There could be the repair mechanics also, or some persons, some professionals are going for actually repairing the machinery. So you need equipment, you need persons also to repair the machinery or to carry out the repair and maintenance work. So if you are actually transferring the technicians in these conveyance, you are carrying a bus from one place to another, from workshop to the repair centers. Your technicians are being carried in that particular bus. Your material is being carried in a truck for carrying out repair and maintenance in the location, in its other location, which is located in a different state. That transfer of that movement of conveyance will not be termed as supply. Only condition is that these trucks should not be supplied. These trucks must not have been sold in the other state, which is not the situation in the given case. So here the interstate movement of trucks from the workshop of Gagan Engineering Private Limited in Haryana to its own repairing centers for carrying out the repair work will not be termed as supply. Let us once again see all the conditions which are listed out here. Interstate movement of various modes of conveyance between distinct persons carrying goods or passengers. Either it is carrying goods or it is carrying the technicians, persons who are carrying out the repair and maintenance work for repairs and maintenance. And these goods include rigs, tools, spares, any goods which are being there in that conveyance, that will also not be considered as a supply. आप कुछ tools, spare parts लेके जा रहे हैं वहां repair करने के लिए, तो वो गुड्स जो वहां पर आप प्रिपेयर करने के लिए यूज करेंगे और जो कन्वेंस आप यूज करेंगे, वो सब चीजें उसमें दैट विल नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड एज सप्लाई. उनकी मूवमेंट एक स्टेट से दूसरे स्टेट, वहां जाने के बाद व्हेन दैट repair is that repair process which you are carrying for the client, you have repaired some material, you have repaired some machinery, some electronic device for the client. And that repair activity which you are providing, that service which you are providing to the client, that will be considered as a supply. But this movement of conveyance from one state to another, from one location of a person, of a business to another location, carrying the goods, repair material, technicians in that conveyance for carrying out repair and maintenance at some other location, this movement will not be considered as a supply, and this is neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. Mutatis mutandis means in a similar manner. Services provided by conveyance will be liable to GST. Rito is asking. Rito, please make it clear that which particular service provided by conveyance you are referring. Because if conveyance is moving from one state to another, that is outside the purview of GST. If conveyance is providing the passenger transportation service, or through conveyance you are transporting the goods, then those services are taxable and they are within the purview of GST. Now, with this, we come to an end of discussion regarding supply. And we have seen so many aspects of supply So in order to summarize, now since we did everything in bits and parts, so I wanted to summarize everything at one place, that if you have to see now at today at this point of time, if you want to ascertain whether any activity, any transaction can be termed as supply or not, so which all steps you need to uh, incur, or which all steps you need to take, that yes, this particular activity, this particular transaction is a supply. So with this diagram, we'll be able to find out that yes, this activity is a supply and this is not. Let us go through it. So first of all, is the activity a supply of goods or services such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal? So first of all, we have to see whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services, whether it is in the nature of these 8 transactions. And apart from that, also it can be of any other nature, but it should be an activity which is either a supply of good or a supply of services. So if it is not so, then it will not be a supply. We'll straight away come to the conclusion that this activity is not a supply. It is not in goods or services. It is an immovable property. It is not a supply. If it is an activity which is of goods or services, if answer is yes, next question which we will find out is it for a consideration? So we'll go straight down first. Is it for a consideration? Yes, it is for a consideration. Next question which needs to be determined is it in course or furtherance of business? Because we know there are 2 tests, consideration and business test. So is it for a consideration? Yes. Is it in course or furtherance of business? Again, we have a yes. Then also we have to see one more thing, which we just discussed, that whether it is an activity covered in Schedule 3 or it is a non-supply as per section 7.2b. This was the section I didn't discuss because you need not remember that. But is it a non-supply? Is it outside the purview of GST by way of Schedule 3 or notification or circular? And in case the answer is yes, then again it becomes, and the activity is not a supply. Though it had a consideration, it was for goods or services, it was in course or furtherance of business, but this activity was mentioned in Schedule 3, it will not be considered as supply. If it is not mentioned in Schedule 3, so it passed consideration test, it passed business test, and it is not in Schedule 3, then it becomes a supply. Okay, so this is one aspect of seeing. Now let us once again start from the beginning. Activity is a supply of goods or services or both. Yes. It is for consideration. No, it is not for consideration. But we know if something is not for consideration, then where do we need to go? Is this activity specified in Schedule 1? Because something which is not some activity which is not for a consideration, but if it is mentioned in Schedule 1, so there is a possibility that it can be supply. So the answer is that consideration is not there, but if it is mentioned in Schedule 1, if answer is no, then that activity is not a supply because it should be therein. Then will not go any further test. We'll not do any further test of business or Schedule 3. We'll see consideration is not there. It is not in Schedule 1. It is not a supply. But if it is there in Schedule 1, again, we have to see the business test, because I said that either of the 2 things have to be present. If consideration is absent, then business element has to be there. So it is there in Schedule 1. Active consideration is not there, but it is there in Schedule 1. Now, with Schedule 1, I already told you when I discussed Schedule 1 that the business test has to be qualified. So is it in course or furtherance of business? Yeah, if answer is no, then again it does not become a supply. But if answer is yes, then this activity we have to see whether it is specified in Schedule 3 or it is a non-supply. Same route will follow, that if it is in Schedule 3, then it will not be a supply. If it is not in Schedule 3, so consideration is not there, but business test is passed, it is not in Schedule 3, that activity will term as supply. Hope this flowchart is clear to you. Now, next step is that now we again start from the first step. Activity is activity of sale of goods, or it is in nature of supply of services, and it is for a consideration. Consideration is there. But is it in course or furtherance of business? It is not in course or furtherance of business. The answer is no. That consideration is there, but it is not in course or furtherance of business. Then we have to check whether it is import of service, because we know only exception to business test is import of service. Consideration is there, business test is absent. So we need to check whether it is an import of service. If answer is no, then that activity is not a supply. But if your answer is yes, then you again have to see whether that particular transaction is covered in Schedule 3 or not. Anything which passes all the tests has to pass Schedule 3 test also. So it is mentioned in Schedule 3, then it becomes a non-supply. But if it is not mentioned in Schedule 3, then it becomes a supply. So this flowchart explains you that how you have to determine whether a particular transaction is supply or not, whatever steps you have to follow. So now with this we come to an end to the discussion of supply. And I will quickly cover the concept of mixed supply and composite supply, because this is what we all are supposed to cover today. I have to cover some questions also at the end of the session. I want to cover those questions. I don't want to leave those questions today, because with this we will come to an end of chapter 1 and 2. Supply leviable to GST. Quickly we'll cover this. Now, something is supply. Now, whether it will be leviable to GST or not, how will be determined? There are two things which need to be present. Supply must be by a taxable person. Who is a taxable person? A taxable person is a person who is liable to get registered. Though he might not have actually got registered, but he is liable to register, or he has obtained the voluntary registration. He was not liable to register, but he obtained the registration voluntarily. Then that is also a taxable person. So supply should have been made by such a person. Either he is liable to register or he has voluntarily registered. If he is liable to register, even though he has not obtained registration, any supply made by him will be leviable to GST. He is supposed to obtain registration and pay GST. Supply must be a taxable supply. Now, what is a taxable supply? Taxable supply is a supply on which GST is chargeable, GST is leviable under Section 9 of CGST Act or Section 5 of IGST Act, which you will be discussing in next class, charge of GST. That means supply should not be an exempt supply. Exempt supply is the supply which is not leviable, which is either by way of notification it has been mentioned as exempt, or it is a non-taxable supply, or which is a nil rated supply, that is considered as exempt supply. So something which is leviable to tax is a taxable supply. If it is a taxable supply, if it is provided by a taxable person, GST would be leviable. Now we come to composite supply. We'll take queries afterwards. Let me first complete the composite and mixed supply concept. We'll take all the queries collectively. Composite supply is a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient. Just now we had seen what is a taxable person. So a taxable person is making a supply. Now this supply comprises of two or more taxable supplies. At least two supplies are there in this particular supply. So when two supplies are made together, a combination of these services or goods or two goods, two services or goods or services. So at least two supplies are there. There can be more also, which are naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. So generally these two supplies are made together, out of which one would be the principal supply, that would be the main supply, and other one would be an ancillary supply which is made with that particular main supply. This is called the composite supply. So what is a principal supply? Principal supply means supply of goods or services which constitute the predominant element of the composite supply. Other supply would be an ancillary supply. So this is what we understood from the definition of composite supply, that at least two supplies are being made collectively, and out of which one would be the main supply, one would be the ancillary supply, or one would be main supply and other services or other supplies would be ancillary supplies. And these supplies are made generally together in ordinary course of the business. They are generally supplied as a collective supply service or collective goods, or they are generally supplied together. In that case, what would be the rate of tax which would be applied? Because we know that there are 3 or 4 supplies which are involved in a particular supply, and all of them carry different rates. So now the doubt which arises is regarding the rate. Why this concept of composite and mixed supply is relevant? It is because of the determination of rate or classification of those goods. Because 3 or 4 supplies are involved, or sometimes 2 supplies are involved, different rates are applicable on those supplies. So which particular rate should we take on that particular supply? So in case of a composite supply, the rate of tax which is applicable on the principal supply will be taken on the entire amount. So if we are charging 1 lakh rupees, and in that we have 4 supplies involved, for which we are charging 50,000 for the principal supply and 10,000 for the other supplies, then it becomes, and when it becomes a composite supply, then an entire 1 lakh rupees, on entire 1 lakh rupees, you will charge the tax at the rate which is applicable on the principal supply. We'll understand it with the help of examples. First of all, how will you determine that whether these services or goods are bundled in the ordinary course of business? Read these words, services as supplies. So we said that supplies should be bundled in the are naturally bundled in the ordinary course of business. Now, there are certain tests which have been provided. They are not the determinative test, but illustrative or indicative test, which might help you in understanding that whether this transaction is a composite supply or a mixed supply or an individual supply. Perception of the consumer or service recipient. Service recipient always perceives that I will get these two things together. For example, mobile phone with battery. If you are getting a mobile phone, these days batteries are inbuilt in most of the mobile phones, but you generally assume that mobile phone will be there with the battery, or you assume that mobile phone will be there with the charger. Because we generally perceive, the customers generally get these things this way, so they perceive it. So these are naturally bundled. Majority of service providers, they provide these supplies in this manner only. For example, the airline service, airlines provide the catering also, food also in their ticket value. So this is generally, majority of the service providers are providing it this way. So that makes it naturally bundled. Or the nature of transaction is that, nature of service is that one service is the main service and the other service is, though it is an incidental or ancillary service, but it is important for the efficient or the better enjoyment of the main service. For example, if you're going to a hotel and you are getting breakfast as a complimentary, is complimentary included in the package, then it helps you in better enjoying your accommodation facilities. So this breakfast is an ancillary service and accommodation service is the principal service. These two services collectively become a composite service. So other these are only illustrative indicators. You cannot say that this ensures the presence of composite supply in a transaction. These indicators generally help you in giving you an indication that composite supply can be there. The elements are normally advertised as a package. Generally, as a package, they are given that if you're getting the accommodation, you'll get breakfast, dinner, you'll get some other facilities also, commutation facilities, some local transport is clubbed with that. So they are generally, if they are normally advertised as a package, then they are generally, all different elements are not separable. You are not able to separate the different elements of a particular transaction. So different supplies are there, but they are clubbed in such a manner you are not able to separate them. Different elements are integral to an overall supply. If one is removed, the nature of so if you are removing one of them, then supply will be affected. The efficiency of the supply will be affected. Then that will also be termed as a composite supply. So please note that there is no straitjacket formula to determine whether a service is naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. You have to examine each and every case individually. These are some examples of the composite supplies. Now, a person, he is a seller of ready-made garments and he sold goods to Poshak manufacturers has sold shirts in designer boxes to Chiku at Chiku Limited's outlet for supply to Chiku Limited's outlet. So what Poshak manufacturers is saying, I will send these ready-made shirts in designer boxes to your outlet. So he is giving the shirts, plus he is giving the packing material, that is the designer boxes, plus the transit and insurance is also with the Poshak manufacturers. He will arrange transport also. He will arrange the insurance in the transit time for Chiku Limited. So all these, so there are 4 supplies: supply of shirts, packing material, transportation, and insurance services. This is a composite supply, but the principal supply is supply of shirts. अगर shirt supply नहीं हो रही तो आप बाकी services भी supply नहीं करोगे. So this is the principal supply. Predominant nature is supply of shirts here. When a consumer buys a television set, he gets a mandatory warranty and maintenance contract with the TV. देन दिस इज अ कॉम्पोजिट सप्लाई। अगर आप टीवी परचेज करते हो और उसके साथ आपको वारंटी मैंडेटरी जो मिल रही है, 5 years वारंटी आपको इनबिल्ट मिल रही है, दैट इज अ कॉम्पोजिट सप्लाई, जबकि उसकी वैल्यू अलग से सप्लाई के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में इंक्लूडेड होती है, लेकिन that will be a, though it is a separate supply, it is clubbed in the main supply. So it is, and it is provided to every customer. So it is a composite supply. Which is the principal supply? Supply of television. Ancillary supply is warranty and maintenance. A travel ticket from Mumbai to Delhi may include supply of food being served on board. This we had already, insurance and use of airport lounge. So अगर ये सारी services आपकी travel ticket में included हैं, then that will constitute a composite supply, जिसमें कि main supply क्या है? Transportation of passengers. The travel airlines intends to transport the passengers. Along with that, it is providing launch, it is providing free food, it is providing the insurance to the travelers. So this becomes a composite supply. Now let us see how it is taxed. Rati Computers is selling laptop. Laptop is worth rupees 54,000. Laptop bag is also being provided. It provides its laptops in laptop bags to all its customers. These laptop bags are worth rupees 4,000, but together they charge 55,000 from the customers. Now this is a naturally bundled activity. Laptop bags are naturally bundled with laptop and it becomes a composite supply. So which is the principal supply? Laptop, because अगर laptop bag नहीं है तो laptop नहीं है तो laptop bags भी नहीं मिलेंगे. So laptop is the principal supply. Laptop bags are the ancillary supply. So in this case, the laptop rate of tax which is applicable on laptop is 18%. On laptop bag, suppose it is 28%. So what will be the rate which will be charged on this particular supply? Will be the rate which is applicable on the principal supply. Principal supply is supply of laptop. So out of these two rates, which rate will we take for living on laptop or this composite supply is 18%. So entire 55,000 will be taxed at the rate of 18%, which is the tax rate which is applicable on the principal supply. Principal supply is supply of laptop chargeable to tax at the rate of 18%. Hope this is clear. Now we have some clarifications regarding composite supply. In case of the printing industry, we have, in case of the printing industry, there is an issue that, that both goods and services are involved. You are printing some material, some content on paper. So paper is also given, and as well as the service of printing is given. So both goods and services are involved. So now in this composite service, what is the principal nature of service? Which is the principal supply? Supply of goods or supply of services has always been a matter of contention. So department has issued a circular for clarifying this. There are two cases. Now they have covered two cases. First case is a case where suppose you are printing the books, pamphlets or brochures or annual reports. You can primarily take the example of books. If a book is being printed, author has provided content to the printing press that this is the content you have to print. Printing press is using its own paper and it is printing a book. Now in this case, the principal supply is the supply of is printing of the content, because content is more important and this content is printed by the printer. Had the content not been there, then book does not have any meaning. Pamphlet does not have any meaning. You can compromise on the quality of paper, but you cannot compromise on the content of the book, content of pamphlet, brochure, or annual reports which are being published. The content is very important. So the printing of content, that becomes the principal supply. And what is ancillary supply? Is the supply of paper which is being used in printing this book, this annual report, this brochure, this pamphlet. Okay. Second case is where you are getting your envelopes, letter cards, boxes, tissues, napkins printed, wallpapers you are getting printed, and the design or the logo for that is given by the recipient. So what printer is doing, he is using his own material, he is using his own physical inputs and printing these and making these envelopes or letter cards or printed boxes. Design or logo is provided by the recipient. So the circular clarified that the principal supply here is the supply of goods. That is the supply of this envelope, letter cards, print boxes. So this is a material which is being provided. On that material, whatever printing whatever content is provided by the recipient. So that supply of printing of content is an ancillary service. What is principal service is the supply of goods or supply of these envelopes, letter cards, printed boxes, tissues, napkins, etc. So primary services, principal services, supply of goods here. Food supplied to inpatients. In a hospital, if somebody gets hospitalized, then he is provided food from the hospital because they don't want to the patients to eat outside food. So inpatient is a patient who is admitted in a hospital for the treatment. So inpatient is given the food by the hospital. That food is a composite supply in his healthcare services. So whatever amount he is paying to the hospital for receiving those healthcare services, that food amount will also be included there only. And it is not separately taxable. Now, whether this healthcare services will be liable to GST or not, that is a separate thing that we will do afterwards. But this is a composite supply. We are only on the composite thing. Activity of bus bodybuilding. Now, this is also a composite supply. Building the body of a bus is a composite supply. But whether it will be a supply of goods or supply of services, so circular says that it has to be determined on the basis of facts and circumstances of the case. So actually, circular also doesn't clarifies that whether it will be a supply of goods or supply of services. It depends on each case. Retreading of tires. Now, sometimes your tires of your vehicles get torn out. That means the rubber out on the outside layer, it gets worn out and it has to be retreaded. It has to be again put on the tire because that is important for a tire to move. So while retreading the tire, the service provider is, or you can say the person who is carrying out the retreading. He is providing the service of retreading, plus he is using his rubber, his material for retreading purpose. So both the things are involved. Two supplies are there. So it is a composite supply. But the predominant element is the retreading because material is used for the purpose of retreading. Now he has to carry out this retreading of tires. For that, he need that rubber and other material, glue and whatever other material he is required. So rubber used for retreading is an ancillary supply, and retreading of tires, the service of retreading is the principal supply here, but it is a composite service. We take another case. The person with a worn out tire goes to a supplier. He says, you take my old tire and you give me a new tire. Now this is an exchange transaction actually. Here the person is not retreading his old tire. He is giving him a new tire. So this is a supply of goods because here no service is involved. Now we come to mixed supplies. Mixed supply is two or more individual supplies of service are there. Here also two or more supplies are there. But first thing is that they are not composite supply. And second thing is they are not related to each other. They are not naturally bundled. Third is only a single price is charged. So please remember for a mixed supply, first condition is that a single price has to be charged. It should not be a composite supply. Two or more supplies are being supplied in mixed supplies also, but they are not related to each other and they do not that is why they do not constitute a composite supply. How can you determine whether a particular supply is a mixed supply or not? First of all, you have to rule out that this supply is a composite supply. So first check will be a check of composite supply. We'll see if we see two or more supplies are being undertaken together, we will first of all check whether these two supplies are composite supplies. Answer is no. Then we will move further whether they are mixed supply or not. How will you check? You have to check whether a single consideration is being charged for this particular supply. If answer is no, then it is an individual supply. If answer is yes, then it is a mixed supply. So first check will be to check composite supply. If it is not a composite supply, check whether a single consideration is being charged. If single consideration is being charged, it is a mixed supply. If single consideration is not charged, it is an individual supply. Suppose you are supplying a package of food, canned food, sweets, chocolates, aerated drinks, dry fruits. You have big baskets which are being given as gifts in various marriages or functions, parties. So this is a mixed supply because none of these items are related to each other. They are not naturally bundled. You don't get, every time you are buying sweets, you don't get chocolates with it. You don't get cakes with it. It's not a natural bundled item. So this is, and if they are, but only thing is that there should be a single price which is being charged for this particular package. If each of these items is being sold separately, you are being charged separately for sweets, for chocolates, cakes, dry fruits, then this is an individual supply. But if for the entire package you are having a price of 1,000 rupees, then that becomes a mixed supply. A house is given on rent through a single rent deed. One floor is given for the purpose of residence. On another floor, some printing press has to be established. So now this is not naturally bundled. Both the floors are given for two separate purposes, but the house owner is getting rent of a single rent of a single amount of 1 lakh rupees per month for this renting activity. But these two floors are not related to each other, so they are mixed supply. So now how the mixed supplies are taxed? Mixed supplies are taxed at the rate highest among all the supplies. In case of composite supply, we saw the principal supply or predominant supply. In case of mixed supply, we have to see the supply which is of the highest rate. The rate of supply which is highest among all the supplies, that will be the rate at which mixed supply will be taxed. Let us understand it with the help of an example. Shringar Enterprises supplies 10,000 kits at rupees 50 each. Okay. Amounting to rupees 5 lakh to Raghav General Store. So value of each kit is rupees 50. This kit has one shampoo, one face wash, and one kajal pencil. Now, is it so that shampoo is always supplied with a face wash or a face wash is always supplied with a kajal pencil? No. All these three things are not related to each other. They are not naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. So first test which we applied is that whether these three things are three supplies are composite or not. They are not composite because they are not naturally bundled. Now, the rate of tax which is applicable on shampoo is 18%, face wash is 28%, and kajal pencil is 12%. So what would be the rate which would be applicable on the kit of rupees 50? It will be the highest rate. Highest of all is 28%. So the rate of tax which will be applied on the entire consideration of 5 lakh rupees will be 28%. That is the highest rate. So in case of composite supply, it is the rate of principal supply. In case of mixed supply, it is the highest rate which is applicable. More than one supply made together and taxed at individual rates. Now, this is the third or residual case, that if it is not a composite supply, if it is not a mixed supply, then what is left is the individual supply. The transactions will be taxed at the rates at which they have been, which are applicable to them. So, but in this case, separate consideration should be indicated against each such supply. Then they will be taxed at the rate which is applicable to each of those supplies. For example, in case of servicing of cars, where we are providing spare parts or labors, this is a circular which has clarified this thing, that if the value of goods and services is shown separately in the invoice, then the goods and services will be taxed at the separate rates. We have a question in study material for this. I will take this question and I request all of you to answer that. Then after that, we'll take a break for 10 minutes after this question. Dum Electronics has sold electronic items to Akbar Retail Store. It has sold refrigerator, stabilizer, LED television, 42-inch 42-inch television, split air conditioner, and stabilizer for air conditioner. Now, it has issued a single invoice indicating the price of each of the above items separately in the invoice. Akbar Retail Store has given a single check of 1 lakh rupees for all the items as a composite discounted price. Please don't refer the answer given in the study material. I request all of you to think about it. I request to think about this answer in the break. And after the break, I will discuss the answer to this particular question. State the type of supply and the tax applicable in this case. But before breaking for the break, I will take the queries. And this particular question, I request all of you to think in the break and come up with the answers. Okay. Now, ma'am, when we take the license, so it will be a supply, as we discussed before. Supply will not be a license if it is a supply of liquor. But if it is any other license, then it will be a supply. Because I told you that you have to go to schedule 3 also. After taking out all the tests, after undertaking all the tests, you have to see schedule 3 also. Then movement is within state between distinct persons. Yes, Nisha. If movement is within the state, then within distinct persons, if something is moving within the state, you know that within same state, it will not be considered as supplies. Convince is moving. It is within the interstate that the doubt arose that it can be termed as supply by someone, which was negated by the circular. Consumables or spares sold in course of service or repair, then if they're actually sold afterwards, they will be considered as supply, because it is only their movement which is not considered as supply. Carrying goods for repairs is not supply, but carrying goods that are part of main business is a supply. Goods for repairs. If you are, yes, if you are Rituraj, if you are carrying any goods which you have to supply further at the workshop, you don't have to don't have to use those goods for repair purpose, you just have to sell them as it is, then that will be considered as supply. License is applicable for supply. I think this question I have already answered, but license, yeah, any other license will be supply. Only license for human consumption, license for alcoholic liquor for human consumption will not be a supply. Mobile phone principal supply and charger composite supply. Parthaswamy, you're right. 31st January lecture is not available. Please communicate it to our technical team. You can write a mail at ajit.kumar@icai.in. I will give you the ID and I will make sure that this 31st January lecture is available on the US app. Composite supply, Sushil is asking to explain once again. After the break, I will explain it once again, Sushil. And I think all queries are relating to composite supply only. Some students have answered regarding this. In composite supply, supply related to each other, but in mixed supply, supply is not related to each other. Neha, you are right. If in same invoice, laptop and laptop bag is mentioned separately, then it becomes an individual supply. One single price is not being charged. They have mentioned 50,000 for laptop, 5,000 for laptop bag. Then this will become an individual supply and separate rates would be charged. Naturally bundled means with something which is in ordinary course of business, it is supplied with each other. It is a combination of these two items is already there. Suppose I say the accommodation service with food. So generally, naturally bundled, that means in common business parlance, in common business practice, these two are generally provided with each other. Distinction between composite and mixed supply, Sushil, now would be clear to you. Abdul, I have answered your query now. And is it a Pooja is saying it is a mix up. So Pooja, you're answering that particular example. Abdul is saying lecture is available on YouTube. So some student had doubt. Krunal, you has a doubt regarding app. So you can, for the timing, you can refer it on YouTube. Other students are answering only the query, which this example. Now this question you think in the break, and then after the break, I will discuss first of all this question and then we'll take rest of the questions. So please, I will extend the session by 15-20 minutes today because I want to discuss some questions with you so that you can understand the concepts which we have done throughout these 4 classes. Okay, so we are going for the break right now for a 10 minutes break. We'll try, or it will be an 7 to 8 minutes break because I want to finish all the questions today. So let's go for the break. Welcome back, students. Let us resume the session after the break. So we took a short break today because we have to cover some questions, and I want you to cover all the test your knowledge questions in this session for supply concept, as well as some MCQs, some questions on chapter 1 also we will take today. So regarding the question with which we went for the break, I had received some answers before the break also, and during the break also I have received answers. So let's go through the answers first, then I will let you know what is the correct answer. Rito is saying it is not a composite supply nor a mixed supply as prices are shown separately in the invoice. Ansari is saying mixed supply and the rate will be 28%. Then Sweetie is saying it is third case because prices and rates have separately indicated, and so rate would be applicable. Then Nagarjun also feels that it is a separate supply. Manoj says that air conditioner and refrigerator along with their stabilizers is a composite supply, rate will be 18 and 28%. Abdul is asking a query. I will answer your query, Abdul. And Vishali is also Vishali feels that it's an individual supply because of the different prices, different prices mentioned in the invoice. Preeti also says taxable individually. Nisha says mixed supply because a single and it attracts the highest rate. Nisha has not mentioned the reason for that. Khushbu, individual supply. Rahul, this is not treated as composite supply as all items are individual shown. Okay. So now let us see what is the correct answer. So you see that the prices of all the goods which are being supplied has been shown separately. First of all, we will go step by step. First, let us see whether it is a composite supply or not. All the items which are provided in this particular package or the electronic store, which the items which it is selling or the goods which it is selling, are all these goods sold collectively every time or everywhere? Is it naturally bundled in ordinary course of business? It is very natural to get refrigerator, its stabilizer along with television and split air conditioner and stabilizer? No. Refrigerator can be clubbed with stabilizer, but then there has to be a separate supply. This is a supply of all these items in a separate in single invoice. If the store, if the electronic store wishes to club refrigerator along with its stabilizer, then it should have been a separate invoice for refrigerator and stabilizer, separate invoice for air conditioner and its stabilizer. It has sold 5 items under one invoice, then, and they are not naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. So first possibility which is ruled out is composite supply. Composite supply, as we as we discussed earlier also, that there are 2 or more supplies which are naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. One of them is a principal supply. Now, in this supply, can you say any one of them is a principal supply? Can you say refrigerator is more important or air conditioner is more important or television is the main supply? No. So none of them is a principal supply. They have been just clubbed. They have been just put together in one basket, but they are not related to each other. They are not composite supply. Second test which we will apply is mixed supply. Now he's saying a single price is charged for them. Now we see the information given in the question, which says that Dum Electronics has issued a single invoice. Invoice is single, indicating price of each of the above items separately in the same. So price is separately indicated. So one price has not been charged. They have told the the recipient that what is the price for refrigerator, stabilizer, television. Everything is given separately in the invoice. So single price is also not being charged. Akbar retail store has given a single check of rupees 1 lakh. Now, giving a one single amount for consideration also does not make a single price. Price has been separately shown. So you cannot say that since a single consideration has been received in one go or a lump sum amount has been paid for the consideration, it does not mean that the supplier has charged a single price. अगर आपको एक आपने बार्गेनिंग करके 1,20,000 के डिफरेंट सब आइटम्स को मिला के 1,20,000 बन रहा था, आपने 1 लाख उसके लिए पे किया, तो वो एक सिंगल प्राइस नहीं बन जाता. सिंगल प्राइस का मतलब है इनवॉइस में आपको एक ही प्राइस लिख के दिया हुआ है, इंडिविजुअल आइटम्स का प्राइस इनवॉइस में नहीं है. दैट बिकम्स अ सिंगल प्राइस. Now here it cannot be a composite supply, it cannot be a mixed supply, so definitely it is a supply which is to be tax at the individual rates which each of the items carry. This is a question from Test Your Knowledge. So आप देखोगे at the end of the session, all your questions of Test Your Knowledge are also more or less covered. All your quiz questions we'll try to cover. Examples, illustrations हमने सब during the course of session we have covered. So study material का more or less सारा portion आपका after these 4 classes it will be covered. Now today is the end of the supply chapter. So we'll be covering with all the concepts, illustrations, examples, questions, quizzes, everything. Let us see some more answers I have got. No, it is not naturally bundled. Kadambari is also there. Abdul has asked a query. So before moving further, I will take his query. In general store, there are mixed supplies. So what tax rate he pays? General store, in a general store, if he is selling, if he is giving you a single price, he is giving you a package. You went to a general store and that person charged you a single price for a basket of a gift basket which has chocolates, then some snacks in it, then cookies are there, and some balloons are there. So he has put everything in one basket and he has charged you 1,000 rupees for that particular basket. So then it becomes a mixed supply. So because he has charged a single price. But if you went to a general store, you purchase 5 items and he charges every item, he issues you an invoice and charges separately for every item, then that becomes an individual supply. Now, whether that particular general store is subject to liable to GST or not, that is a different thing. But this supply transaction will be taxed in this manner. Now, with this, we come to the end of all the discussions. And now we will take some questions. So this is quiz time for you. We'll take very simple questions initially. We'll start from chapter 1 and then we'll move to chapter 2. Manoj is saying that the refrigerator and stabilizer. Manoj, I read out your answer earlier also, but I said then invoice should also have been issued in that manner in order to make it as a composite supply. Now let us see first question. I would request all of you to please participate in these questions and answer them as per your understanding so that you can check that how much you have understood the concept till now. Mr. Champak has made an interstate supply of goods from Madhya Pradesh to Lakshadweep. Madhya Pradesh is a state, Lakshadweep is a union territory. Tax to be charged in this case. Now, what tax will be charged in this case? When we discussed in chapter 1, the legislative framework of GST, at that time, we had done that interstate supplies, they are subject to which particular tax. We had discussed about CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST. Then we said there are 2 types of supplies under GST, interstate supplies and intrastate supplies. And we need to know the location of supplier as well as place of supply for determining whether a particular transaction is an interstate supply or an intrastate supply. So, but for that we have to refer to chapter of place of supply, which you will be discussing afterwards. But for the time being, we are only on the thing that this is an interstate supply. I have told you that it is an interstate supply of goods. So which tax would be levied? So I have got all the correct answers from you. Zahida, Partha Sarthi, Ritu, Aparna, Sweetie, Rahul, Preeti, Pooja, Manish, Abhishek, Pratindhe, Nagarju, Bhavika. All of you have answered correctly that this is subject to IGST. Tax that would be charged would be IGST. Let's see next question. Mr. Champak has made an interstate supply of goods from Madhya Pradesh to Delhi. Tax to be charged in this case. Now, Madhya Pradesh is a state and Delhi is also a state. Now, no union territory involved. Interstate supply. Okay, Manoj, now you have understood this. So, good. Now, what tax would be charged on from a supply from Madhya Pradesh to Delhi? So, I'm waiting for your answers. On an interstate transaction, we saw that when goods were transferred from state to a union territory, from one state to a union territory, the tax which was charged was IGST, and the integrated goods and services tax. Now, on a supply from state to another state, from one state to another state, what would be charged? Yes, IGST would be charged. Someone has mentioned IGST plus SGST, but why you have mentioned IGST? And Bhavika is saying CGST plus SGST. No, Bhavika. When you are making an interstate supply of goods. So interstate supply Either you make from one state to another state, or one union territory to another union territory, or one state to another union territory. So there can be two states which are involved, two union territories, one state and one union territory, or both the union territories which are involved. And in that case, the tax would be charged as IGST only. No CGST, no SGST will be clubbed with that, only IGST. IGST is a combination, is a sum of CGST plus SGST only. So all of you who are answering IGST are correct. Sushil, Sweetie, Rituraj, Aparna, Khushbu, then Abdul, Pooja, Chaitra, Abhishek, Manoj, Pratidhne, Neha, Kadambri, and Krunal. All of you are right. Sorry, I took the last slide. Stay. So we had covered till this. Yes. Now next is Mr. Champak has made an intrastate supply of goods within Puducherry. Tax to be charged in this case. Puducherry is a union territory with legislature. Okay. So now this is actually, I would like to see what answers I get. We had seen that any tax which is charged within a union territory. In case of a union territory, what tax would be charged? Because the transaction is being carried out within a particular union territory. Now, if it is a union territory with legislature, mind the words that it is a union territory with legislature. So what tax would be charged? Puducherry is a union territory with legislature. It has its own legislature. There are three states which have three union territories which have their own legislature. One is Delhi, one is Puducherry, one is Jammu and Kashmir. So till now, I have not got right answers. Yeah, now I have started getting some right answers. So let me tell which all have answered correctly. Partha Sati saying SGST. Partha, it will be SGST. By SGST, you mean CGST plus SGST, I suppose. And Preeti also means the same, that CGST plus SGST, because IGST is a tax which comprises of both the elements, central tax as well as central element, state element. But when you are taxing an intra-state transaction, separate tax will go to center and state. That will be CGST and SGST. So Ritu is correct, and Reddy is also correct. Then Sweetie, Krunal also I think he wishes to say CGST plus SGST. Pooja, then Manish and Srinivasan, Preeti, Abdul, and Krunal. Now you are right. Both of them will be charged. Neha, you are right. And Chaitra, Ankur, and Tumpa. So this is CGST plus SGST. Why? Because Puducherry is a union territory, but it has its own legislature. So if you remember when we discussed that if a union territory is there, it has its own legislature. Under GST law, it comes within the definition of state only. So a union territory with legislature is a state. SGST plus CGST will be charged. UTGST will not be charged. If it is a union territory which does not have its legislature, where governor is the head, then in that case the UTGST will be charged. But those union territories which have their own legislature, they will be charged SGST plus CGST. So the tax would be charged with CGST and SGST. Now in this case, what would be the answer? Champak has made an intrastate supply within Ladakh. Now tax to be charged in this case will be, others have also answered correctly, Manoj, Rani, Vaishali, all of you have answered correctly. Those who are saying UTGST, they need to know that UTGST with legislature is a state under GST law. Please remember this thing, UTGST with legislature is a state. There are three union territories which have their legislature, Delhi, Puducherry, and Jammu and Kashmir. They have their legislature, they are treated as states. So CGST plus SGST is charged in these three union territories. Now, if any transaction is there, intrastate transaction is there within a union territory, then you are answering. Sohail, why are you writing IGST? Maybe you're writing for the first question, I suppose. In question 3, Sushil is saying CGST plus SGST. No, Sushil, here. Okay, question 3 I got. So this was the previous question. So you're right, Sushil. Rito is now saying CGST plus UTGST. Okay, Rito, Parthasarthi, Tanishka, Manish, Sweetie, Neha, Srinivasan, Aparna, Kadambri. Kadambri, it will be, you are answering for the previous question, I suppose. Abdul and Vinapusa, then Manoj and Preeti, Vaishali, Bhavika, Harish. Harish, you are asking for, you are replying for the previous query, I suppose. Previous question. So Zahida, Sohail, Neha, all of you are right. Chaitra, Pratindya, you are right that CGST plus UTGST will be charged in this transaction because it is a union territory without legislature. So it is a union territory. CGST plus UTGST is the tax that would be levied on the intrastate transaction here. Next, Mr. Champak has made an intrastate transaction, intrastate supply of goods within Uttar Pradesh. Now this is a state. So tax to be charged in this case would be, I'm giving the answer because it is very obvious and very easy also. It would be CGST and SGST because Uttar Pradesh is a state. So there's no doubt. Doubt was with regard to union territories with legislature because many of you treated it as a UTGST to be levied. But there SGST would be levied. Now let us move to the next question. This is also with regard to Chapter 1, GST in India Introduction. So those of you who had attended the session would be able to answer this query. Or those of you who have an idea regarding this, which of the following taxes are not subsumed under GST? Central sales tax, service tax, entertainment tax levied by local bodies, value added tax, and customs duty. So I am waiting for the answers from all of you because we saw that GST subsumed so many taxes within its purview when it was introduced in 2017. On 1st July 2017, a number of indirect taxes which were prevailing at that time were replaced, and in place of that, GST came into the purview. And so many indirect taxes were subsumed into GST. They were included in GST. So, which are those taxes? Now, I'm getting most of the answers which I am getting is A. Option A is the correct option as per many students. Some of them have mentioned customs duty. So those of you who are mentioning the option B as correct option, that is Manish, Rituraj, Aparna, Sweetie, Vinapusa, Bhavika, Abhishek, Abhishek, then Parthasarthi, Preeti, Neha, Harish, Manish, and Manish. So all of you are mentioning option B as correct answer. Rituraj is also mentioning B. Then Manish and Chaitra, Rito, Nagarju. All of you are right. Why? Because entertainment tax levied by local bodies has not been subsumed under GST. Customs duty is very obvious answer. Every one of you know that yes, custom duty has not been subsumed under GST. But entertainment tax levied by local bodies, entertainment tax otherwise has been subsumed under GST, but the entertainment tax which was levied by local bodies was not subsumed in GST. Central sales tax, service tax, VAT, this we know for sure that yes, these are subsumed. Customs duty, we are very sure that yes, this is not subsumed because it is still being levied. Entertainment tax levied by local bodies was the only catch that yes, it was not subsumed in GST. It was outside the purview of GST. So now Komal and Nagarju, both of you are right. You have answered it correctly. Now the question is different. Which of the following taxes are subsumed in GST? You have to answer that you have to provide the taxes which have been subsumed in GST, which have been included in GST. Luxury tax, entertainment tax levied by local bodies, value added tax, and purchase tax. So in exam also, when you are doing any question, you have to see the question specifically that either it is asking exclusion or inclusion. So sometimes in hurry we answer otherwise. Now here I am not asking what I asked in the previous question. I am asking which taxes have been subsumed in GST. So I'm waiting for answers. In fact, here most of you have answered correctly. That is option A. So Venkata has answered, then Sohail, Aparna, all of you have answered correctly that this is option A. Option A is the correct option here because luxury tax, entry tax, value-added tax, and purchase tax. All these 4 taxes have been subsumed. Some of you have answered option D. Option D says 1, 2, and so purchase tax, they felt that it is not in GST. No, purchase tax is also subsumed in GST, only entertainment tax levied by local bodies. So half of the answer we got in the previous slide itself, that entertainment tax levied by local bodies is outside the purview of GST. Okay. Now I'm getting most of the correct answers. So Vaishali, Ansari, Abdul, Ankur, and Zahida, Bhavika, Parthasarthi. All of you have answered correctly. Ruturaj, Pratindhe. So option A is the correct option because 1, 2, 4, and 5 are the taxes which have been subsumed. So Neha, Rani, Pooja, Runal, all of you are right. Sushil is also right. Let's move to the next question. Which of the following taxes are not subsumed in the GST? Now again, we have reversed the question that we are asking which of these taxes are not subsumed in GST. Again, you have to see it from that point. I think this has been repeated, I suppose, this question. This has been repeated, so we'll move further. Tobacco is subject to which of these taxes? GST, state excise duty, VAT, and CST, central excise duty, both A and C. A and C means GST and central excise duty. So tobacco is subject to what? Which type of tax tobacco is subject to? Because you know that tobacco, as we discussed, that some of these items, tobacco, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then regarding the opium, hemp, and petroleum products, we discussed specifically that what is their livability to GST, whether they have been subject to GST or not. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption, whether it is outside the purview of GST, because now I'm not going to tell you the answer before I get answers from you. Neha is asking to repeat the question, which is that tobacco is subject to which of the taxes? GST, state excise duty and VAT, central excise duty, or both GST and central excise duty. So I have got most of the correct answers in this question, and I really appreciate that with that you remember the concept which we discussed in first class. So Aparna, Preeti, Rahul, Aparna, Preeti, Rahul is not correctly answered. Manish, Harish, and then Khushbu, Srinivasan, Nisha, Manoj, Pratindhe, Sweetie, and then Abhishek, Abdul, and Pooja, then Rito, and Bhavika. They have answered correctly. You see, tobacco is subject to GST. Tobacco has been brought under the purview of GST. But apart from that, the government has kept the power to levy central excise duty on tobacco because tobacco is a sin good and it is taxed very heavily. So under GST also it is taxed very heavily. But apart from GST, it is subject to central excise duty also. So both A and C is the correct answer. That is option D. Which of the following statements is incorrect? See, you have to tell incorrect statement. First is alcoholic liquor for human consumption is outside the realm of GST. Manufacture or production of alcoholic liquor is subject to state excise duty. Interstate sale of alcohol is subject to CST or VAT respectively. Interstate and intrastate sale. So interstate sale is subject to CST, intrastate sale is subject to VAT with regard to alcohol. And alcoholic liquor for human consumption is subject to GST. Now, which of the options is incorrect? So I've started getting the correct answer. I suppose this is for you all are answering for this particular question only, option D. So Chaitra, Ankur, Mohammad Sohail, and Komal, Rituraj, Abdul, Srinivasan, you are answering correctly. Your answers are correct. So see, what is alcoholic liquor for human consumption? Whether it is within the purview of GST or it is outside the purview of GST. If you remember that, then you will be able to answer it clearly. Yes, I have got so many answers and all of you are correct. Tanishka, Komal, Manoj, Harish, Vaishali, Hemlata, Abhishek, Veena Pusa. No, Vinampusa, you are wrong. You have mentioned the wrong option. I will let you know where you are wrong. So Neha, Rahul, Rani, Sushil, Krunal, Pooja, Manish, Manoj, and Sushil. All of you are right. Now let me explain what is the correct answer. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption is outside the purview of GST. I think today also we discussed when we were discussing about state licenses being issued to alcoholic liquor for alcoholic liquor selling. So there also we discussed that alcoholic liquor for human consumption is outside the purview of GST. So if it is outside the purview of GST, then it would be subject to excise duty and VAT only. So therefore, the manufacture of alcoholic liquor is subject to state excise duty. Sale of alcoholic liquor is subject to CST or VAT, and it is not subject to GST. So what is wrong here is option D, that it is subject to GST. All other options are correct. Presently, dash is levied on dash of petroleum and diesel. So is it GST or supply? Then central excise duty is leviable on manufacture or production. Central sales tax is leviable on interstate sale of petroleum and diesel. VAT is leviable on intrastate sale. And state excise duty is leviable on manufacture of petroleum or diesel. So which of these options is correct? Ankur, you're right that it is outside the realm of GST. Chatra, Hardik, all of you are right. Tumpa is also right. I covered all of first chapter, Abdul is saying. So good, Abdul, that you read the entire chapter 1 thoroughly. So I have started getting answers for this particular question. So Srinivasan, you're right. See, we discussed in the first class regarding petroleum and petroleum products. That GST is leviable on these petroleum products from a date to be notified by the GST Council. So at present, GST is not leviable on the petroleum and petroleum products. So first option becomes wrong or it gets eliminated. Now, when petroleum is not subject to GST, then it will be subject to central excise duty, central sales tax, and VAT. So first and fifth option are not correct. What is correct is second, third, and fourth. So we have option A, which says second, third, and fourth, and option A is correct. I have got correct answer from most of you. Srinivasan, Rituraj, then Parthasarthi, Aparna, Abdul, Sohail, Rani, Khushbu, Rito, Abhishek, and Preeti, Harish, then Ashwini, Hardik, Manish, Manoj, and Sweetie, Vishali. Option 5 is correct. Hemlata is saying no. Hemlata, state excise duty is not levied. It is the central excise duty which is levied on the petroleum products. Then Tanishka, Pooja, Zahida, Manoj, Nisha, and Kadambari and Komal. So all of you have answered correctly this question that petroleum and petroleum products are not subject to GST. They are subject to central excise duty, CST, and VAT. Now we come to chapter 2. Now we'll be having queries or questions of chapter 2. Mr. Popert has imported architect services. Remember schedule 1, schedule 1, then clauses of section 7, maybe schedule 2 is also attracted. Everything you have to keep in mind while answering these questions. In this question, you have to answer whether it is a supply or not. Mr. Popert has imported architect services free of cost from his brother. His brother is a well-settled architect in Germany. Now, he has availed these services for his house. So, I need to know that whether it amounts to supply or not. So, all of you have answered option A for the previous question are right. Sushil, you are right. It's option A. Ankur is saying it is subject to GST and state excise duties. Ankur, it is not, alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not subject to GST. It is outside the purview of GST and central excise duty is being levied. Now I've started getting answer for this question. Rituraj saying not a supply because it is for his house. Then Parthasarthi saying not supply personal. So Rituraj, Parthasarthi, then Abdul, Vaishali, Abhishek, Abhishek, and then Nisha, Sweetie. All of you are right. In fact, Nagarju is also right. Rito is right, but we have one more reason for this, Rito. I will let you know. And Abdul, you are right. Now, why is it a supply or not? Let us see. It is not a supply. Why it is not a supply? First thing we said, it should be a supply of goods or services. So yes, services are there. Second, consideration should be there. Now here consideration is not there. So we have to go to Schedule 1. In Schedule 1, we have a specific clause for import of services. Import of services by a person from his related person. Now, we'll see the entire clause, then we'll see whether it qualifies here or not. By his import of services by from a related person in course or furtherance of business. So, is his brother related to Mr. Popat? His brother is a well-settled architect in Germany. So, he is not wholly or fully dependent on Mr. Popat. So, therefore, he is not related to Mr. Popat. Now, this import of services is not from a related person. Another condition was there in course or furtherance of business, though we may not go to that condition, but here that condition is also not fulfilled because he is getting this architect services for his own house. So, first of all, consideration is not there. So, we had to go to Schedule 1. In Schedule 1, we saw that there is a clause of import of services, but for that, we need to have these services from a related person in course or furtherance of business. Mr. Popat's brother, being a well-settled architect, is not wholly or fully dependent on Mr. Popat. Therefore, he is not a related person, and therefore this clause will not be attracted. So it is not a supply because consideration is not there. I have got correct answers now from Harish, Kadambri, and Manoj. In fact, all of you have answered correctly. Bhavika, Krunal, and then Rani, Sushil, Pooja, and then Bhavika and Neha. Pooja is saying import of services without consideration from relative is a supply. But Pooja, import of services without consideration from relative is a supply. And since he is not a related person, so this will not be considered as supply. And plus, this business test also has to be there, that it should be in course of furtherance of business. Mr. Popat has imported architect services free of cost from his brother, a well-settled architect in Germany, for his office. So now whether it will be a supply or not. Now in this case, let us start understanding this question. Again, it is a supply of services. Then we have to see consideration. Consideration is not there. Then we have to refer to Schedule 1. So in Schedule 1, because it's the same service which we had received in the previous slide we had discussed. So it is import of services, and import of services from a related person in course or furtherance of business is a supply. So first of all, we have to check whether his brother is a related person to Mr. Popat. And then we have to see whether it is in course or furtherance of business. So all of you have answered that. And Abdul is saying repeated again. Abdul, it's not a repeated question. You have to check. There is a difference between this question and previous question. I will take you to previous question also. He has imported architect services free of cost from his brother, well settled in Germany, for his house. Here it is for his office. So the basic intent of receiving the service has changed. Now, most of you are answering that it is not a supply. Rituraj, Sweetie, and then Bhavika, Ritu, Sohail, and Pooja, and in fact, Nisha is not answering correctly. Sushil, Manoj, and Neha. Rest of you are answering that it is a supply. Now, those of you who are answering that this is a supply because it is in course or furtherance of business, so for them, I will tell that in case you want to make it a supply, all the tests have to be fulfilled. The clause says, or para 4 of Schedule 1 says, that in case of import of service, consideration is not charged, then in that case, import of service should be from a related person in course or furtherance of business. Now, here these services are being received or imported in course or furtherance of business, but these services are not received from a related person because his brother, who is a well-settled architect in Germany, is not his related person. Now, since he is not his related person, this one condition is left unmet and therefore, or unsatisfied. Therefore, this particular transaction cannot be termed as supply. So those of you who have answered that this is a supply, I hope they are clear now that this is not a supply because it is not received from a related person. All the conditions have to be fulfilled. They have to be cumulatively satisfied. So only because it is in course of furtherance of business, it does not become a supply. Consideration is not there, but then it should be from a related person. It should be an import of service. It should be in course of furtherance of business. So one condition which is left out is that is, it is a related person. So Mr. Popert's brother is not related to him in the given case, and therefore it is not a supply. So Nisha, now this is clear to you. Okay. Hemlata is answering correctly that this is not a supply. Preeti and Hemlata, both of you are right. Now we come to the next question. Now you have to answer this question. Mr. Popert has imported architect services free of cost from his brother, who has gone to Germany for studies on Mr. Popert's expenses for his office. Same example I have given 3 times. Every time I have made a small change in the question and then the answer changed. So, or in fact, answers from you people have changed. So you got confused with very small changes. This shows that under GST law, very small changes can change the question. So you have to read the question very carefully. Now, I'm once again repeating the question. Mr. Popert has imported architect services free of cost. So consideration is not there. Services have been imported from his brother, who has gone to Germany for studies on Mr. Popert's expenses for his office. Now the answer which I am getting, I am very happy that all of you have answered that it is a supply. Okay. So Rituraj is saying now it is a supply. Ritu, then Hardik, Abdul, Parthasarthi, Bhavika, Preeti, Anishka, Manoj, Aparna, Venus Busa, and Khushbu, Chaitra, Ram, Neha. Because Vishali says related person, brother, and for further of business. Yes, related person, that is brother, is dependent on Mr. Popert, and it is for in course or furtherance of business. So you are right. Abhishek, it is a supply. So Mr. Popert has imported architect services without any consideration. We went to schedule 1. Schedule 1 says import of services by a related person. Now here the brother is dependent on Mr. Popert because he is studying in Germany on Mr. Popert's expenses. So he helped him, or he provided architect services to him, but he is dependent on him. So he is his related person. These services are being provided in court, are being received by Mr. Popert in course or furtherance of business. Therefore, all the conditions have been satisfied and it becomes a supply. So Hemlata and Pratinidya are right. Hardik, Kadambri, Ankur, and Neha, Nisha, Krunal, all of you are right. Pooja, Rani, Sohail, Krunal. So anybody's name is left out, please don't feel that you have not answered correctly. You are right that it is a supply. I might have left out anybody's name also. Now let's come to the next question. Mr. Popert has imported architect services for $50,000 from his brother, a well-settled architect in Germany, for his house. Now what will be the answer? So read each and every word very carefully. Very small tinkering here and there has changed the answers earlier also. So Mr. Popert has imported the architect services and he has charged a consideration of 50,000. He has taken it from his brother. Now his brother is a well-settled architect in Germany and this supply has been received, or these services have been received for his house, for Mr. Popert's house. So now I am receiving answers. Sohail is saying it is a supply. Rituraj is also saying it's a supply. Sushil is saying in question 13, Mr. Popert case, Supply, how, ma'am? Sushil, I think you are asking for the previous question. So till the time I receive answers for this question, let us understand this question. This is a supply, Sushil, because here in this case, consideration is not there, but we have to go to Schedule 1. So Schedule 1 says import of services by a related, import of services received from a related person in course of furtherance of business is a supply. It is deemed as a supply. So here in this case, we are importing architect services. We are not receiving consideration. We are receiving it from a person who is related to Mr. Popat. His brother is wholly dependent on Mr. Popat for his expenses. So he is a related person. Any person, under the definition of family, it has been specifically mentioned that brothers, sisters, grandparents, and parents have to be dependent, wholly dependent on a person to become his related person. So brother is wholly dependent on Mr. Popat, so he is his related person. And these services has been received for in course of furtherance of business. So all the conditions are satisfied and therefore it becomes supply. Now next question, I have received answer. Correct answers have been received from Aparna, Pratinde, Ritu, then Krunal, Bhavika, Ansari. Ansari, you have correctly answered, but half portion of your reason is not correct. Then Tanishka, Sweetie, Jahida, and Srinivasan, Vaishali, Nagarju, Kadambri, Chaitra, Govindula, Hardik, and then Khushbu, Ankur, Abdul, and Manish, Rani, Parthasarthi, and Pooja. And so only that till that extent. And Hemlata. Hemlata is also right. Bhavika is also right. This is a supply. Okay. Now, those of you who have answered that it is not a supply, let me tell you, Sushil, you have answered that it is not a supply. Let me tell you that here the consideration has been charged. So in all our previous examples, the supplies were made free of cost. There was no consideration which was charged. But here the consideration which has been charged by the by the person who is providing the service or exporter of service, his brother, of rupees $50,000. So he has imported the services for a consideration. Now, the moment the consideration comes into picture, it goes out from Schedule 1. Now we are not going to discuss Schedule because consideration is there. Now he's saying for his house. So that means the second test, business test, is not present. It is not passed. That business, it is not in course of furtherance of business because Mr. Popat is receiving these architect services for a consideration, but not in course of furtherance of business. He is receiving it from a related person or not, that is irrelevant now. Whether he is receiving it from his brother or from XYZ or from a dependent person, his children, spouse, anybody, that does not matter here because now we come to a different clause of Section 7, which says that import of services for a consideration, whether or not in course or furtherance of business, qualifies as supply. I once again repeat, importation of services for consideration, whether or not in course or furtherance of business, qualifies as supply. So if we see this particular case, importation of services is there, consideration is there, it is not in course or furtherance of business, received from whosoever person, doesn't matter to us. So it becomes a supply. So even if it is for his personal purpose, but since consideration has been charged, it becomes a supply. Now, whether GST would be levied or not, GST would be payable or not, that would be a different thing. But today we are on chapter of supply, so it is a supply. So I hope those of you who had answered that it is not a supply, then they would have been clear that he is not this doesn't matter that whether it is not in course or furtherance of business, whether it is related from a related person, because consideration is there. The moment consideration comes into picture, these issues that whether he is related or not, whether it is in course of furtherance of business, they become irrelevant. So I hope Manoj, Sushil, it is now clear to you. Hemlata has answered correctly, and then Bhavika, Krunal, all of you are correct. So Manoj, now it's clear to you. Sushil says in previous question, Mr. Popat, answer is supply. Understood? Now, so it's good that you have understood the concept. Now let's come to the next question. Now I'm taking few of the quiz questions which are there in your book because answers to them have been provided by way of a scan code, the QR code. So if you answer them here, you will get the correct answers. Mr. Venkat hired in fact, this we have already done now. Mr. Venkat hired a professional firm based in UK to receive the legal consultancy services for his family. Okay. Professional firm, he has hired a professional firm in UK. So we have to see that from whom he is receiving these services or what purpose he is receiving these services and whether he is charging consideration or not. Okay. Mr. Venkat hired a professional firm based in UK to receive the legal consultancy services for his family dispute. These services received by Mr. Venkat dash. In case such services are received by Venkat, now we are given two cases. Services are received by Mr. Venkat free of cost. Then what will be the answer? Services are received by Mr. Venkat for a consideration of US dollars 1,000 rupees. So what would be the answer in these two cases? I'm waiting for the correct option. So I've started getting the answers. So let me tell you which all have answered correctly. Ritu, then Preeti, Rituraj, and Parthasarthi, Aparna, Vaishali, Sweetie, Bhavika, Hardik, Manish, Ankur, and Pratinday. Now, in fact, more correct answers I have received. Manoj, and then Sushil, Tanishka, Bhavika, Manish, Sohail, Govindula, and then Zahida. So your answer is correct, that option B is correct. Why option B is correct? We'll take both the cases one by one. First is we are taking the case where he has not charged any consideration. So it is a supply of service, consideration is not charged. Now when consideration is not charged, we go to Schedule 1. Schedule 1 says import of services from a related person in course or furtherance of business. Now here it is not a related person, it is not in course or furtherance of business. A professional firm based in UK he has hired, so it is not related to Mr. Venkat. He has not received it in course or furtherance of business, so it does not amount to supply. This particular transaction does not amount to supply. But in case he takes consideration, he is charged consideration. Mr. Venkat has paid a consideration of $1,000 to the professional firm in UK for receiving services for his family dispute. Then it becomes a supply. Why? Because import of services for consideration, whether or not in course or furtherance of business, whether or not from a related person, becomes a supply. So option B is correct. In first case, it will not amount to supply. In second case, it will amount to supply. So now Rani and Nisha has also answered correctly. Nagarju has answered correctly. Krunal, all of you have answered it correctly that this is option B. Option B is correct. This is one of the quiz questions given in the study material. Pooja is answering D. No, Pooja, you're not right. Many of you have answered option D as correct option. In second case, it will become a supply. Why? Because consideration has been charged. So consideration has been charged. Now the business test is not required to be satisfied. Okay. So now Nisha and Rani and Tumpa and Komal have answered correctly. Let's go to the second question. This is also a quiz question. In fact, if you remember first quiz question, somebody asked in the query in the last session regarding Mr. Handsome and Charge Limited being a Del Creditor agent of Charm Limited. So that I have already answered. You can go to the previous session for knowing the answer and answering that. Next question is, which of the following activities or transactions qualify as supply of goods? So supply of goods. So remember, I'm talking not only about supply of goods. Dhruv Electronics supplies washing machines to its customers. Big Bang Steels Limited supplies a machinery on rent to Jigyasa manufacturers. Larsen Technicians retrades the tires given by Deen Dayal Automobiles on job work basis. Vigyan Technologies develops a customized software for a business school. So I'm waiting for the correct answer. And I'm happy that all of you have answered correctly, that it is option A. Srinivasan, Rituraj, Sohail, Aparna, Harish, Rito, Preeti. All of you are right that it is option A. How it is option A? Big Bang Steel supplies machinery on rent to Jigyasa manufacturers. It is renting a machinery. So renting or right to use, giving right to use is a service. Job work is also a service, which is as per Schedule 2. This question is actually as per Schedule 2. So as per Schedule 2, the job work is also a supply of service. Then developing a customized software is also a supply of service as per para 5. So what is left here is Dhruv Tara Electronics supplies washing machines to its customers. So it is a sale of goods. So ownership of the goods has actually transferred. Transfer of title in the goods is a supply of goods. So option A is the correct option. So now all others have answered correctly. Manoj, Sweetie, Tanishka, Bhavika, Abdul, Zahida, Nagarju, Manish, Kadambri, Vishali, Nisha, Khushbu, Parthasarthi, Tumpa, Chaitra, Rani, Pooja, Hemlata, Aditi, Sushil. All of you have answered correctly. In fact, Sushil is constantly numbering the questions also, though I have not put any number in the questions. Next time I will put the number in the questions because it becomes easy for you to locate. It becomes easy for me to locate that which all question you are answering. Now, next is which of the following activities are considered neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. So we have seen in the discussions of supply that there are certain activities which are considered neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. They are considered as non-supplies under GST. Now, out of these 4 transactions, which of the transaction can be considered as a non-supply? Interstate movement of goods of trucks between distinct persons for repairs and maintenance, grant of mining rights by the government to businesses, services provided by an employer to an employee, not in, I will add words here, not in course of employment, but it is imperative because nothing has been mentioned here. 4th is lottery. So which is the correct answer? Because I already got one of the answer as C. That is why I mentioned that services provided by the employer to employee. Since nothing is mentioned, it is not in course of employment. Sushil is asking question, how in previous question, the first is the correct answer. Answer A, option A is how it is correct. Sushil, because we are answering or we are actually checking which of the following transactions qualify as supply of goods. So you have to go to Schedule 2 now. Schedule 2, para 1. And clause A says that transfer of title in goods, transfer of ownership of the goods from one person to another. Okay, you might be thinking that he has supplied washing machine to its customers, so consideration is not mentioned here. But here our main intention is to find out that whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services. And it has been an underlying assumption that consideration has been charged, because in none of the examples we have mentioned that consideration has been charged, because we are more on supply of goods or supply of services. So the rest 3 examples are supply of service. Only we have supplied goods because we have transferred the ownership of goods from one person to another. So it becomes a supply of goods. Other 3 are supply of services. And there is an underlying assumption that the consideration is there, because if we do not assume consideration, we will not be answered this question. Now in the present question, what is the answer? Some of you have answered D, some of you have answered C, but many of you have answered A. So who all are correct? Harish, Aparna, Srinivasan, then Sohail, not Sohail, sorry, Sohail, you are not right. Pratinde, Bhavika, Hardik, Chaitra, then Parthasarthi, Sweetie, Khushbu, Ritu. No, just confused. So now let me tell you. So this is a bit confusing question, I suppose. So I'm getting varied answers in this question. Though generally I have got majority of the answers are correct in most of the questions. Here I have got varied answers. We had just discussed Schedule 3 and other non-supplies, and this question is based on that only. We'll start from D option, lottery. We did the entry in Schedule 3 which said actionable claims other than the specified actionable claims are outside the purview of GST. So there we understood that the specified actionable claims are within the purview of GST. All actionable claims will not be considered as a supply. Only those actionable claims which are specified actionable claims. There is a specific definition of specified actionable claims, which has lottery, casino, horse racing, online money gaming, then betting and gambling. These 6 things are covered, or 6 activities are covered in specified actionable claims. Now, lottery is one of them. So these actionable claims are within the purview of supply. All other actionable claims are excluded. So lottery, being one of the specified actionable claims, is a supply. So this cannot be the correct answer. Option C, services provided by an employer to employee. It is not mentioned that it is in course of employment. That means, so we have seen in para 1 also, in schedule 1 also, para 2, that any gift provided by employer to employee, any service provided by employer to employee will be included or will be considered as a supply, provided it is not in course or in relation to employment. So here nothing is mentioned, so we cannot assume that he has provided it in course of employment. The services by employer to employee, otherwise, because employer does not provide services to employee. Generally, employer otherwise also they provide the consideration, they provide perquisites to employer, but they do not provide any services directly to employer in course of employment. So if an employer is providing any services to employee outside the employment, then it becomes a supply. Grant of mining rights by the government to businesses. Now, if a government is providing license for mining or rights to the businesses for mining, then this is nowhere mentioned in Schedule 3 or any notification or any circular. It is only the license to sell the alcoholic liquor for human consumption, which is included in non-supplies, but otherwise it is a supply. So this is not a non-supply. Left is option A. Option A, we had done a specific circular which clarified that interstate movement of conveyance between distinct persons for carrying out repairs and maintenance, which is carrying the goods or passengers, is neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. So this option A is a non-supply. Option A is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Hope this is now clear to you. So now I'm getting all correct answers as A. Zahida is still mentioning B, but Zahida, B is not the correct answer. It is nowhere mentioned. It's the alcoholic liquor for human consumption license, which is a non-supply. Srinivasan is saying, can you please upload the material today itself? Yes, Srinivasan, you will get these PPTs maybe within an hour or so. We have to mention para and schedule while giving answer in exam or just revision. No, Bhavika, don't remember para number and schedules. You can still remember because they're very easy to remember. Schedule 3 is non-supply. Schedule 2 is classification. Schedule 1 is consideration. No consideration, but still a supply, deemed supply. That you can mention. But till the point you remember them for sure. Don't quote anything in exam which you are not sure of. Misquoting a section, circular, notification, schedule number or rule number can lead to losing the marks. So if you know them for sure, then only you should write. You should focus more on understanding the provisions, reiterating or reproducing the provisions. And that also I will say not as it is. You can reproduce them in your own words. Only thing is that the correct meaning should come. Because when you try to write it and you are not able to convey it properly, and we feel that we had written the answer correctly, but we did not get the full marks or we were not awarded marks properly. Only thing is that the correct meaning was not might not have been conveyed from your answer. That could also be a reason for losing the marks. So now all of you have understood option A is correct. Abdul is asking how BCD is incorrect. That I had already discussed, Abdul. What do you mean by distinct persons? Sushil is asking. Sushil, I had discussed distinct persons in great detail in last session. In last class I discussed distinct persons. So you can refer that session. Otherwise, if I start explaining at this point of time, we'll miss out some of the questions. And I want to discuss every question with you so that you can understand the concept. Now, this is also a quiz question. Jaskaran supplies gift packages at ₹30 each to its customers. Each package contains 2 chocolates, 2 fruit juice bottles, and 1 packet of toy balloons. Very easy question. I am expecting correct answer from all of you. Rates of GST applicable on chocolates, fruit juices, and toy balloons package, because it's a gift package, it's already mentioned, are 18%, 12%, and 5% respectively. Now, Jaskaran is liable to pay GST at the rate of, what is the rate which is applicable on these goods which have been supplied by Jaskaran to its customers? Because we have already understood the concept of mixed supply, composite supply, individual supplies. So we have to see that whether it is a mixed supply or it is a composite supply or it is a individual supply. He is supplying three types of goods in a package. One is chocolate, fruit juice, and toy balloon. So we have to see whether these are related or not. So I have got the correct answer from everyone except barring a few. So Srinivasan, Preeti, Ruturaj, Yashwini, Ritu, then Bhavika, and no. Bhavika is not correct here. Vaishali, Sohail, Manish, then Gunjan, Ardik, and Parthasarthi, Kushbu, Harish, and Rituraj, Pratinde, Pooja, Gunjan, Annapa Swami, Sweetie, then Chaitra, Manoj, Sohail, Adma, Krunal, Tanishka, and Hemlata and Gundula are not correct. These are not individual supplies because a single price has been charged. So we'll start from the very first step, which we always do. Sushil is also not correct, saying 12%. How come, Sushil, you're saying 12%? And Varna is also saying 12%. Then Nisha is right. See, first test is whether these are related to each other or not. This gift package, items in this gift package, whether they are composite supply or not. We always have to move step by step when we have to see whether it is a composite supply or a mixed supply. First step is whether it is a composite supply or not. So is it so that with chocolates you always get fruit juice, or with fruit juice you always get toy balloons? No, it is not so. So they are not naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. Second test is whether a single price has been charged for them. Yes, a single price has been charged for the entire gift package, that is rupees 30. Third is that whether their price has been separately known to the customer. So in this case, with the information which is given, you can only see that one price is charged from the customer. They are not aware of the individual prices or specifications. So here the rate of tax which would be charged would be applicable, which is applicable in case of mixed supply, and that would be the highest rate of tax. Now highest rate of tax is 18%. So the rate of tax which is applicable here is 18%. That is option B. So now Pooja, you're right, and Bhavika, Mohammed, Akif, then and Zahida. All of you are right. Aditi, the correct answer will be B because I have just explained the reason for that. Let us see the test your knowledge questions. Now, this is a very simple question. Meghraj and Company wishes to commence the business of supplying ready-made garments within Punjab and in neighboring state of Delhi and Haryana. Kindly state as to what is the taxable event under GST and leviability of CGST, SGST, or UTGST and IGST on the same. This is actually a comprehension and knowledge-based question. So taxable event, supply of goods or services in course of furtherance of business for a consideration. Now these words are imprinted in our mind that we have to see all these things when we say a taxable event under GST, which is a supply. So all the conditions should be fulfilled for supply. Leviability of CGST, SGST, UTGST and IGST, how will it vary? If it is an intrastate transaction, it will be CGST plus SGST. Intrastate transaction within a UT, Union Territory, it will be CGST plus UTGST. And if it is an interstate transaction, then it will be IGST, which will be levied. So subsequently, I have got correct answer from Rani, Khushbu, Komal, and Shushil also now is clear that answer is B. Sulekha manufacturers have a factory in Delhi and a depot in Mumbai. Both the establishments are registered in respective states. Finished goods are sent from factory in Delhi to Mumbai depot without consideration, so that the same can be sold from the depot. Examine whether the said activity amounts to supply or not. So I'm expecting answers from all of you. In the meantime, Hemlata is asking, please explain gift packages at rupees 30 each. Doesn't mean it's charged separately on the items. Doesn't mean it's charged separately on the items. No, I said gift package is at rupees 30. So in that package, we had three commodities. We had balloons, we had chocolates, and we had fruit juice bottles. So the price of rupees 30, Hemlata, that was charged for the package as a whole. So that is what mixed supply means, that 2 to 3 supplies. Now here there are 3 supplies: juice bottles, toys and chocolates, toy balloons and chocolates. Now all these 3, the single price is being charged at rupees 30 for the package. So package as a whole has 30 rupees price. These 3 commodities are being charged at a single price of rupees 30. They are not related to each other, and that is why they become a mixed supply. Hope now it is clear to you. Now, so I'm getting answers. So let me tell you which all are correct here. Bhavika, Srinivasan, Rituraj, Harish, then Aparna, Kadambri, and Manish, Bhavika, Ritu, then Pratindre, and Chaitra, Manoj, Yashwini is not right, Sweetie, then Yashwini, now you are right. So you have changed your answer. Nisha and Khushbu and Vishali. Yes. So Himlita, now you are clear. So all these have answered correctly that it is a supply. In fact, many of you have mentioned reason also, that it is separately registered. Both the units are separately registered. That is the crux. That is the main reason for these two, this transfer from Delhi to Mumbai depot to be a supply. Because 2 separate registrations are there, any transfer between them will be considered as supply, even though consideration has not been charged. So I'm very happy that all of you have answered correctly. Some of you have not answered correctly, saying that it is not a supply, but I hope now they are also clear that since, even though consideration is not charged, but since it is a supply of goods between distinct persons, it is considered as supply. Distinct persons means here they are distinct persons because they have 2 separate registrations under same PAN. Now, Abdul is saying general store generally gives us one invoice and there is one tax rate. He falls one type of supplies in GST. If you are getting a general store, if you are getting only one rate of tax from the invoice, then that means there could be a possibility that all those goods are taxable under same rate. Otherwise, if those goods are separately charged, then individual rates have to be applied up to. So distinct person concept, I think, is clear to everyone because all of you have answered it correctly. Raman is an architect in Chennai. I think these type of questions we have covered so many before that. These test your knowledge questions of the study material, now they are a cakewalk for you. So all of you can answer them correctly. Raman is an architect in Chennai. His brother, who is settled in London, is a well-known lawyer. So Raman is in Chennai, brother is in London, and he is a well-known lawyer. Raman has taken legal advice from his brother free of cost with regard to his family dispute. Examine whether this activity would amount to supply or not. We have done so many questions of this type. We have discussed this concept so many times that now I think I should get a correct answer from you. So, and then it has a second part also, that would your answer be correct if in the above case, Raman has taken advice in respect of his business unit. So I'm expecting correct answers now because this concept we had discussed so many times, such type of examples. We have taken so many examples. Then just now we have taken questions also. So I hope this should be clear. In fact, we have already exceeded half an hour. So we will continue. We have few more questions, but we'll take those questions only when all of you are comfortable with that, because test your knowledge questions we have covered, examples, illustrations, quiz questions, everything we have covered. Only some additional questions are left, but we'll take them only when all of you are comfortable with them. So Preeti, Kadambri, Rituraj, Abdul, Manoj, and Pratinde are correct. Ritu is partially correct, but I will let you know how. Raman is an architect. Now he has received services from his brother in London. He is a well-known lawyer and he is well settled in London. So he is not dependent on Raman. That means he is not Raman's relative. Services are provided free of cost. Now we'll start from the very beginning. Services are being provided. Supply comprises of services. Services are received without consideration. So immediately when we saw without consideration, we have to go to Schedule 1. In Schedule 1, since it is an import of services, because he is receiving services from outside India, so it is an import of services. We have to go to para 4. Import of services received from a related person in course or furtherance of business. Now here his brother is not a related person, so we will not go further. We'll say it is not a supply. Second case, the question says that if Raman has taken the advice from his business unit for his business unit. Now, in this case, he is taking advice for his, in first case, he is taking advice for his personal purpose from a non-related person. In second case, he is taking advice in course or furtherance of business. He is receiving services, he is importing services without consideration in course or furtherance of business, but not from a related person. He has received services from an unrelated person. So will it become a supply now? No, it will not become a supply, because here also one of the conditions that the supply should be received from a related person is not satisfied. So he is not receiving services from a related person, though it is in course or furtherance of business, though it is falling in, though it is without consideration, but with in course or furtherance of business. But since it is not from a related person, so it will not termed as supply. So Yashwini, then Aparna, and Rito, Bhavika, then Sweetie, Kadambri. Kadambri is ready for more questions. So then Pratindey, I think most of you have now got it right. Padma, Krunal, then Manoj. Hardik is also right. So Mohammad Akif, Sohail, all of you are right. Pooja is also right. Rituraj is saying we can continue with class. So in fact, I am getting positive response from all of you to continue with the class. Many of you have replied that we can continue. Those of you who are not comfortable or who have some engagements, they can see it in the recorded form. Kadambri is saying it's not a supply. Yes, you're right, Kadambri. Then Sushil is saying that in step 2, it is a supply in Raman case. Sushil, I have explained that in second case also, since it is related from a non-related person, it is not a supply. So those of you who are saying it is a supply in second case, I hope now they are clear it is not a supply in second case also, because the services have been imported from a non-related person. So I hope now, so Pranal, now it is clear to you. Pooja is also clear. Tompa is also saying the correct answer. So we are moving to next question. This question I hope is clear to you that in both the cases, it will not be considered as supply. Which of the following services received in the course of furtherance of business without consideration amount to supply? So here two presumptions have already been made. One is, now this is actually easier for you, but we have 4 cases here. So we'll take one of each case one by one. Consideration is not there. Business test is there. That means it is in course or furtherance of business. These services have been received. All these are the cases of import of services. So you know which clause, which particular para we are referring to. Para 1 of schedule 1 you have to focus on. Just now we had done a question on that. Now I think it should be very, very easy for you for all these 4 points. Import of services by a person in India from his son well settled in USA. So question 1. So I'm expecting answer for question 1 from all of you. Import of services by a person from his son well settled in USA without consideration in course or furtherance of business. So I'm expecting answers. Then we'll move to further questions. Let me see. Let me see how many questions we have left with. 4 more questions are there. So all of them are very interesting questions. You will learn something new in each of them. Yes, so Rituraj is saying it is a supply, and Tanishka is also saying it is a supply. Akif is saying it's not a supply. I'm expecting more answers that if a person is importing services from his son who is well settled in USA, but he has not charged any consideration, and these services are received in course of furtherance of business, so whether they will be included in para 4 of schedule 1 or not. I have given you enough hint that it is, we have to consider para 4 of schedule 1. We have just discussed it in detail. So Hardik is saying supply, Tanishka saying not a supply, Ritu is saying not a supply. Oh, okay, Ritu has answered for all. So first option, she is saying it is a supply. Manish is saying not a supply. Preeti again not a supply. And why I'm telling you different answers, because I am getting varied answers for this particular question. So those of you who are saying supply are Tumpa, then Rituraj, Nisha, Hemlata, then Aparna, Pooja, Kadambri, Tumpa, but then it is not saying it. So supply. Manish, Padma, and then Anmol, and Preeti, Gunjan, Vaishali, Pratindhay, Manish. Some of you have mentioned correct reason also. In fact, I'm very happy to see that. Bhavika, and then Khushbu, Anmol. So all of you have mentioned that it is a supply, and it is the right answer. Now, why this has been termed as supply? Because I stressed too much on well settled in USA to confuse you that he is an independent person. Yes, the son is independent of the person who is receiving the services, and he is not dependent on him, but he is still a related person. Because when we did the definition of family, spouse and children will be termed as family, will be considered as family, even if they are not dependent on the person. So they will be his family anyhow. It is this rider is only for parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, but it is not for it is not for spouse and children. They are considered as family even if they are not dependent on the person. Here, as per para 4, all the conditions are being satisfied. Import of services without consideration in course or furtherance of business from a related person. Son is a related person, whether he is independent or he is dependent. Okay, so now hope it is clear to you all. In fact, most of you have answered for all 4 options. You are very quick and it's good to see that. Second is import of services by a person in India from his brother well settled in Germany. So this is now very clear and very obvious. So for this, all of you are answering correctly that this is not a supply because his brother is not a related person here. He is well settled in Germany. Son, though he is well settled, he will be a related person, but brother, since he is well settled in Germany, he is not a related person. And since he is unrelated, this point will not fall under para 4. Import of services by a person in India from his brother wholly dependent on such person in India. Such person in India, that means the person who is in India, his brother is dependent on that person, and his brother is in France. So Sohail, Preeti, and Kadambri, Hemlata, all of you are right that for second option it is not a supply. Hardik, Nisha, then Sohail. Sohail is saying third one is a supply. No, all of you are correct, but Sohail, it is in third option also. Achha, third option is a supply. Sorry, okay, you're right. Import of services from his brother, wholly dependent, it is a supply. Sushil is telling. Sushil was telling second one is a supply, but Sushil in second case it will not be a supply because brother is not related. In third case, brother is related. So in third case, it becomes supply. Manish is right. Second is not a supply. Then Padma, Pooja, all of you are right. Second option, it's not a supply. Third option, it is a supply. Bhavika is right, mentioning correctly. For all 4 options, she's right. And then Anmol is right. Sohail is mentioning for 4th. He has gone on 4th option now. So Kadambri, it is mentioning right. Then Akif, for third option, you are saying it is not, it is a supply. Okay, third option is supply, you're right. Runal is saying third is not a supply, but third, import of services by a person from his brother wholly dependent on such person in India is a related person. So this particular import of services will be considered as supply because it is being received from a related person. So option 3, all of those who are mentioning it as a supply are correct. Padma, Chaitra, and then Hemlata, Tumpa, Nisha, all of you are right that it is a supply. Now let's see 4th option. Import of services by a person in India from his daughter, wholly dependent on such person in India. The daughter is in Russia. Now this is also a supply. In fact, this everyone knows because daughter, either she is dependent or not, it is considered to be a related person. Consideration is not there, but still it is in course or furtherance of business. It is import of services from a related person. It is considered as a supply. So Yashuni, Manish, Jaspreet, then Krunal, and Sushil, all of you are right. Anmol, even though she is not dependent, Nimrol is saying she is a related person, so it is a supply. Then Pooja, you're right in all your answers. And so Jaspreet is saying I could not post the answers earlier. Please match my answers. You can see Jaspreet the recorded version, and you can start answering for the questions which I will be discussing now. Akif says supply, Preeti, all of you are right. Now let's move to the next question. Which of the following is not considered as goods under the CGST Act 2017? Now we have to go back to the definition of goods, which we discussed 2 sessions back. In second session, we discussed the definition of goods. What is goods? So goods, I will start discussing the definition of goods before letting you know that this is what are the options. Old 10 paisa coin having a sale value of ₹100 now. Share of unlisted company and lottery tickets. Now, which of these are considered as goods and which are not considered as goods? So, I'm waiting for answers. Okay, Jaspreet is saying he matched his answers. Good, Jaspreet, that you matched all your answers. Now, this is the these are the three, these are the three transactions which are given to you. Let's say lottery tickets have been sold, shares of unlisted companies are there, and old 10 paisa coin is there. Which of these are considered as goods and which are not considered as goods? We had done the definition when we did the definition of goods, that goods means any immovable property. Oh, sorry, any movable property. It should not be any movable property. So it is a movable property. Then it should be. Then we excluded money and securities from it. Then we said that actionable claims will be included in goods. Why I am reiterating the definition of goods, so that you can get an idea or hint, or those of you who are not able to recall the definition of goods, they can get an idea that what is the correct answer. Because my intention is you should understand the concept instead of just guessing the answer. So the answer which I am getting from all of you, let me tell you who all are correct here. So Rito, then Rituraj, Sohail, Anmol, and then Vishali, and which is not, because we are saying which are not considered as goods. Okay, so I hope you have you have been attentive towards the question also. Jaspreet is right, then Pooja is also right, and because 2 of the options can also be correct minded. Sohail is right. Hemlata is also right. Now let me tell you the correct option is shares of unlisted company. So second is the option which is not a goods. Option 1 and option 3 are goods. How? Because old 10 paisa coins. I said money is outside the purview of goods. Money is excluded from the definition of goods. But then we discussed the definition of money also in that session. So money has, it includes the coins and then promissory notes, bills of exchange, everything it included. But it excluded any money which has some numismatic value attached to it. So we are getting we have a 10 paisa coin which has a sale value of now 100, because it is a very old coin which is no more in use now. And now if you give it to someone, it has a very high value because it is only used as a sovereign. So this is not a goods. Similarly, lottery tickets, this is goods, I would say. This is not excluded from the definition of goods being money. So this is not money. Shares of unlisted company is security, so that will be excluded. Lottery tickets. Now, lottery tickets, just now we discussed Schedule 3, and there we said that Schedule 3 has the actionable claims. Just a minute. Schedule 3 said that actionable claims are outside the purview of GST. That means they must have been included, first of all, in goods. So, definition of goods included actionable claims. But lottery and tickets are also under purview of GST. That is a different thing. But actionable claims include lottery. There we had done that. Why I am referring actionable claims of Schedule 3, because just now we discussed that lottery is an actionable claim. Then I told you that goods include actionable claims. So lottery tickets is also considered as goods because goods include actionable claims. Lottery ticket is an actionable claim. So out of this, the correct answer is shares of unlisted company. I hope now everyone is correct. 1 and 2. Nisha is saying 1 and 2 is not good. So Nisha, now you are, I think you are aware or you know that option 1 is also not correct. Option 1 is goods. Option 1 is not money. Yes, Vaishali is right. Which of the following statements is true? In fact, this is also with regard to definition of related person. So we have done so much into the definition of related family or related persons that I hope this question should also be a cakewalk for you. This I will not discuss because this I have already taken so many times. This is the last question which we will be taking. Which of the following statements is true under GST law? Grandparents are never considered as related persons to their grandson or granddaughter. You have to tell the correct option out of 4, which all are correct options. So there can be more than one correct option also here. So first is grandparents are never considered as related persons to their grandson or granddaughter. Grandparents are always considered as related persons to their grandson or granddaughter. Grandson or granddaughter, they are wholly dependent on their grandson or granddaughter. Grandparents are considered related to their just a minute. I hope my voice is clear to you. I'm audible to you. Grandparents are considered as related persons to their grandson or granddaughter only if they are not dependent on their grandson or granddaughter. So out of these, which all are the correct options? That's what you need to tell. I'm still getting answers for the previous question and most of you are correct in that. Yes, so now I have started getting answers for this. So Anmol, then Pratindhe, Jaspreet, Tanishka, Sohail, Aparna, Vaishali, Kadambri, Ritu, Akif, and Manish. All of you are right. Now, Rituraj is saying option 1 is correct, but option 1 is it is incomplete. It is saying it there. No, sorry, option 1 is wrong. Option 2 is also wrong because it is always considered. They are always considered as related persons because it is not so. They are not always considered. They have to satisfy a condition to be a related person. So, Aditi, second option cannot be correct because we cannot by default consider grandparents to be related. Okay, voice is clear, so that's fine. Then Himlata is saying second and third option are correct because Himlata, third option is correct. Second is not correct because we cannot by default consider them to be the related person. So now Pooja is right, Khushbu is right, then Krunal is right. They are when they are dependent. So Madhav is right that when they are dependent, when they are wholly dependent on their grandson or granddaughter, then only they can be considered to be the relatives. Grandparents are never considered as related person. This is not right, Sushil, because they are considered related when they are wholly dependent. For grandparents, brothers, sisters, and parents, condition is same that they should be wholly dependent on the person. So now Krunal is right. Abdul, you're saying 4, but they are considered related only when they are not related, not dependent. So you have to see the words very carefully. Option 4 says that they are not dependent. So if they are independent, they cannot be considered as related. So option 4 is also not right. So out of these 4 options, which is the correct option? Option 3 is the correct option. Okay. So with this, we come to an end to this presentation because this next question we had discussed so many times. This is only a repetition of all the illustrations, examples, whatever we have discussed, questions we have discussed. This is that only. Regarding 31st January session, somebody has pointed out that it is not available on BOS app. So you can write a mail to Mr. Ajit.kumar@icai.in. Ajit, AJEET.kumar, KUMAR @icai.in. Though I will also try to get that reinstated, but you can write a mail to him also or getting this session on BOS app. Sushil is asking in case of grandparents question, how option 3 is correct. Rituraj is now getting the answer. He understood. So she'll see. We said that grandparents can be family or they can be related persons only when they are wholly dependent on the person. In first case, we said that grandparents are never considered as related persons in any case. So that is not true. They are related person if they are wholly dependent. Second option says grandparents are always considered as related person to their grandson or granddaughter, which is also not true because they have to satisfy the condition of being dependent. Third option says grandparents are considered as related persons to their grandson or granddaughter only if they are wholly dependent on their grandson or granddaughter. That is correct because we said that condition is that they should be wholly dependent on their grandson or granddaughter. Fourth is grandparents are considered as related person to their granddaughter or grandson only if they are not dependent on their grandson or granddaughter, which is also not correct because if they are independent, they cannot be considered as related person. So in this, all these four options, option 3 is the one which is correct. I hope now you have got it. So with this, we come to an end and end of this session. Now, in the last 4 sessions, we completed chapter 1, GST in India, an introduction, and supply under GST. We tried to cover all example illustrations, all the concepts covered in the study material. Hope you have understood all those concepts. And we have done enough number of questions for practice also. In chapter 2, we tried to cover all the test your knowledge questions also. So in case you have any doubts, you can write at idt-inter@icai.in for the queries in case you have any queries regarding that. In further sessions, we'll be covering all the remaining topics. So I always suggest whatever you do in class, you go back and refer the study material questions and then ask your queries in the class. These classes will be very helpful to you for clearing your concepts and for appearing in May 2024 examination. So with this, we come to an end of this session and I hope you enjoyed this session. Please provide your feedback for this session, for these 2 sessions, so that and areas where we can improve upon so that we can understand that yes, you have actually enjoyed these classes. I hope none of the queries is left. So Abdul is saying this chapter is very lengthy. Why is it too long? Because supply is the core of GST, Abdul. So unless you understand supply properly, you will not be able to understand GST properly. So now I hope you are clear with the concept of supply and you are, half job done, you can say. So that is why this chapter is so lengthy. We have given so many examples, illustrations, questions, quizzes, whatever we can give, pictorial representations, flow charts, to make you understand that yes, this is what supply is. We have given all clarifications, notifications, everything we have included in simplified form in lucid manner. We have included that so that you can understand the concept of supply, which is the core of GST, which is the heart of GST actually. So that is why it is so long. So I hope you enjoyed this session. And with this, we come to an end of this session. Thank you so much. Thanks for the patient listening. Thank you.